Welcome to our first board meeting of 2026. Happy New Year, everybody. Hope everyone got a good break over Christmas. And for those watching in, I hope you managed to spend some time with your friends and families as well. So, okay, apologies for absence today. So I've got apologies from Dean Royals. Declarations of interest. Anything that people want to flag that they should because of the items on the agenda, and of course any updates, please let Laura in the board support unit office know. Okay, we'll move on then to the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November 2025. Are there any corrections to the minutes firstly, please? Okay, is everybody happy to approve those minutes? Yes, thank you very much indeed. Are there any matters arising from the minutes or the action log, or for that matter, the work plan that colleagues would like to raise? Around, give you a chance. No, okay. There's quite a few things on the agenda probably that pertain to the minutes as well. Thank you for that. That's great. Moving on then, that was very quick for our colleagues, Nikki and Fern and Kaylee and others who are with us today. Maybe quicker than you expected, Nikki. So we zoomed through that because we really want to hear from you. I'm really glad. Actually, Nikki, we've seen you before, haven't we, at the board? And I think I've met you at a few different events the Trust has organised as well. I think Culture of the Care was the first time I think I heard you speak. And we're really delighted to have you back today with colleagues. I'm going to hand over to you. I don't know if anyone wants to say something first, but you're all very welcome, and we're really glad to have you for our first meeting of 2026. So over to you.
Thank you. I think Kaylee's going to come in first, just with a little bit of an introduction for me.
Brilliant.
So, can everybody hear me?
Perfect.
Yeah, sorry. Morning, everybody. I'm Kaylee. It's lovely to see you all again. I've just come to support and introduce Nikki and give a bit of an overall from our division for a couple of minutes this morning first. So I have met some of you before, but for those who don't know me, I'm Kaylee. I'm the Mental Health Division Clinical Lead. So I support and manage all our clinical services sat in the Mental Health Division and work with Nikki around our Experts by Experience. We've had a lot of conversations since Nikki has come into role around reviewing our strategy currently, our journey today with lived experience in our organisation, and thinking about the division and what we need moving forward. Some of our celebrations is Nikki presenting at celebrating co-production in Humber before Christmas in York, which went down fantastically, and she gave an amazing talk around her experiences that was really well received in the room. Obviously, you'll all be aware of the co-production stamp, which we've had a real increase in the use of across the division recently, which is showing that people are really valuing that lens of what the work that we're doing. We've also got a presentation at Culture of Care event in February, which is looking at our anti-racist practice and how we're supporting that from a co-production point of view moving forward. The other bits for us is just really looking at reviewing the work done to date around co-production, around our lived experience in the division, and creating a blueprint of the things that we've learned from and that we want to do differently, and the things that we've done really well and we want to move forward with. The vision for the division is that lived experience is not a second lens over some of the work that we do, that's built into our systems, our structures, that it is business as usual in terms of our policies and systems, and we really value the skill set that someone who identifies as having lived experience brings. It is a skill set in itself alongside the skill set that they'll have professionally themselves, which we know that Nikki brings. You know, she doesn't just bring a lived experience, she's a very skilled clinician, and she brings that with us and has an understanding of services. So that's a little bit about us, and I'm going to hand over to Nikki now and let her tell us her story. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Kaylee. Okay, so yeah, hi everybody, I'm Nikki. So I have been to board before to share my story. So back in September of 2024, I did share my story at Trust Board, and that was with a focus on my experience of accessing mental health services at Humber as a service user. So today I'm presenting to you as a staff member, and I plan to reflect on my journey from somebody who has accessed services to working to improve them as an expert by experience, and now to leading on co-production in the mental health division as the new lived experience and co-production lead. So I plan to briefly share again a little bit about my own experience with mental illness and how that led me into service user involvement work and eventually to the role that I'm doing now. I will then do a bit of reflection on some of the things that helped me reach this point and some of those challenges along the way, ending with an ask of you to consider how to further embed, expand and invest in co-production across the organisation, as well as further considering how best to provide support for staff experiencing mental ill health. So, as I shared previously, I do have my own lived and living experience of mental illness. I've struggled with my mental health for most of my life, with my difficulties first becoming apparent as a teenager following a series of traumatic events in my childhood. I moved to this area a few years prior to the COVID pandemic, and shortly afterwards my mental health began to rapidly decline, leading me to seek support. I initially saw my GP, who referred me initially into talking therapies and then later to my local community mental health team. During the next few years, I also had significant involvement with crisis services, including the home-based treatment team, which culminated in 3 inpatient hospital admissions over a 2-year period. After being discharged from that final stay in hospital, I was referred to receive dialectical behaviour therapy, or DBT. And one of the goals that I set for myself as part of that treatment was to share my lived experience and contribute to positive changes to mental health services. I took a break from work 2 years ago, moving out of employment to focus fully on my mental health recovery. As things started to settle for me, I wanted to find a way to give back to the services that had supported me. I was initially made aware of the Adult Mental Health Co-Production Group and the involvement mailing list, and I signed up and went along to my first meeting to hear about opportunities for getting involved at Humber and sharing my experiences as a service user. When I shared my story with you previously, I'd just become an expert by experience and was initially working with the ward team at Avondale, where I'd once been a patient on the Culture of Care programme. After quickly realising how much I enjoyed service user involvement work, I subsequently volunteered for every opportunity I could as an expert by experience, gradually building up the number of projects that I was involved in. Alongside the work that I was doing with Culture of Care, I got involved in many other opportunities. Feeling empowered by sharing my story with you at Trust Board, I took the opportunity to share it in other internal meetings too. I was able to contribute my lived experience perspective in teaching and training, for example, jointly teaching to clinical psychology doctoral students and medical students at the University of Hull. As an expert by experience, I've been part of several pieces of work, including joining the organisational work on trauma-informed care, sitting on the Community Mental Health Service User Survey Working Group, and the Care Culture and Equity Steering Group. I've also been involved in updating some key frameworks to support service user involvement with the patient and carer experience team. After leaving my last job in early 2024, I came to dread being asked what I did for a living, as it was a stark reminder of everything I felt I'd lost due to struggling with my mental health. At a time when I felt lacking in direction, service user involvement work gave me a sense of purpose, and I knew that I eventually wanted to work towards a role in this area. I initially came back into employment last autumn in a part-time role with the Yorkshire and Humber Involvement Network, supporting service user involvement in secure services alongside my expert by experience work. That role served to highlight that I wanted to work in a full-time lived experience role, and I knew that I ideally wanted to work within the mental health services at Humber and support co-production in the services that had helped me. When my current role was advertised, I knew that it was what I wanted to do, and I started officially last month, and it feels like an exciting time to take on this role. I'll be able to bring a lived experience perspective into work across the organisation and support co-production opportunities for other patients, service users and carers, with the hope that it's as valuable for them as it has been for me. When I shared my story nearly 18 months ago, I found it helpful to reflect on things that helped and things that made accessing support for my mental health more challenging. Today, I will also reflect on some of the things that have helped me move from someone accessing services to someone working in them, as well as highlighting things that felt unhelpful and suggesting some potential changes. Firstly, the support that I've been offered as an expert by experience and now in my current role has made a huge difference, enabling me to stay well and in employment. Although I'm now working in a dedicated lived experience role, I did previously work for Humber until 2022 in a clinical role. I spent 6 years in paediatric therapies as a speech and language therapist, and it was when I was in this role that I experienced a significant decline in my mental health and ended up on long-term sick leave. During that time, I did not feel well supported as a member of staff experiencing a mental health crisis. I felt there was a lack of support and understanding from my line manager at that time, as well as challenges in engaging with processes through HR and occupational health, which did not feel trauma-informed or understanding of my mental health needs. Both of those areas impacted quite negatively on my own recovery and heavily factored into my decision to leave. When I started working with the Trust as an expert by experience, the support I was offered was incredibly helpful. It was focused on me and my needs and preferences, and I felt able to gradually build up the number of opportunities I was involved in due to this support. That then enabled me to feel confident to apply for a full-time lived experience role. I'm hopeful that I can use my experience and learning from this to encourage the organisation to strengthen the supportive approach for staff living with mental health needs, as well as ensuring support for other staff in dedicated lived experience roles and any staff members with lived experience. Secondly, I want to highlight how instrumental getting involved as an expert by experience has been for me. As someone who'd taken a break from employment to focus on my mental health recovery, getting involved initially as an expert by experience allowed me to gradually ease into working again in a way that felt supportive and manageable. When I first got involved in co-production with the Trust, I would not have been able to return to even a part-time role, and working in such a way allowed me to attend therapy alongside my service user involvement work. This felt very different when I'd been in employment and supported following periods of significant ill health. At those times, I felt quite a lot of pressure to come back, pressure to prove that I was well, and pressure to keep going, even on days where that felt difficult. As an expert by experience, there was more recognition of my mental health difficulties, as well as flexibility and choice about how much I was able to commit to doing. This ultimately supported me to recover and stay well, to be able to come back into full-time employment. It also enabled me to demonstrate that I was able to bring other skills into involvement work in addition to my lived experience perspective, and to forge relationships with senior colleagues across the organisation, all of which supported me into the role that I'm doing today. The last factor that I want to focus on is the recognition of my lived experience as valuable and being supported to feel that my voice mattered and my input was seen as equally important to those that I worked alongside. A good example of this is my involvement in the Culture of Care programme. This was the first opportunity that I joined as an expert by experience, and the commitment from Humber to involve those with lived experience across all the ward teams in the programme has been inspiring. My own perspective as someone with experience of accessing inpatient care was vital to shaping the change ideas on Avondale, and the team I've worked alongside have provided positive feedback around co-production and the value of involving people such as myself in offering a different perspective that is complementary to the clinical staff involved. I've previously shared about the benefits of co-production at our internal celebration event for Culture of Care last year, and I was recently asked to present at an organisational session with colleagues from a neighbouring trust about my own journey from service user to staff member with Culture of Care as a driving force in this. As well as being a huge positive, I do want to acknowledge the emotional toll of sharing my lived experience, and that even though sharing can be empowering, it can also feel hard and heavy. My journey from service user to expert by experience to now leading on co-production within the mental health division has shown me how powerful it can be when people accessing care are genuinely heard, included, and trusted as equal partners in shaping the care that they receive. As I continue to move forwards and grow in this role, I will carry that perspective with me, as I've seen firsthand how it can strengthen services, teams, and outcomes. I strongly believe that ongoing investment in co-production and the expansion of our lived experience workforce isn't optional, it's essential. Sustained commitment to fully embedding lived experience voices at all levels, including investing in dedicated lived experience roles, should be central to the care that we deliver, ensuring that it's compassionate, relevant, and results in real changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nikki. Thank you for that, and congratulations on the new role. It's great. Kaylee, did you want to add anything else before we open it up to comments from board colleagues or questions?
I think Nikki's covered it. I guess the one thing that I did feel like I hadn't mentioned this earlier on was, you know, the position that we want to get to is that we're creating a space for people who overtly identify as having lived experience, or our staff and teams that have lived experience and need that support anyway. You know, we know that we work in an environment that we're working in and around mental illness, but that doesn't make us you know, protected from it ourselves, and we live in environments that we work in environments that have an effect on us. And I think for me, this is about getting from a position of having people coming in with lived experience to creating a space where if you identify as having lived experience, then it's a safe enough space that you can share that experience and skill set with everybody, and you know what you've learned from that. So I just wanted to add that, Nikki, but thank you, you've covered it all really from towards the end.
Thanks, Kaylee. Thanks, Nikki. Okay, I'll open up to colleagues from the board who might have questions and comments. I've got one, but I'll save it for a little while. Steph.
Yeah, hi, Nikki. So I joined the board in September 24. It was my very first board meeting, and you were the very first person on the agenda. So I just really thank you. You really made an impression that day, and it's absolutely brilliant to see you today in this role. Thank you for sharing your story, and yeah, keep it up and keep inspiring us because you do. Thank you.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph. Two. Sorry, two. That's right. Lynn. Sorry, I just looked at the number in the hand. Sorry about that. Lynn.
Thanks, Caroline. Sorry, that made me laugh. Can you hear me okay?
It made me laugh.
Nikki, it's great to see you again, and thank you so much for coming back and talking to us further as well. There is so much work that you have engaged with us with, which is fantastic. I could talk to you for a long while, but I'm going to pick out particularly the culture of care work, Nikki, if that's okay. Obviously, that's really key for us, a real opportunity as well for us to really sort of embed and systematise co-production in our inpatient wards. But I guess my question is, from your perspective, particularly for the senior leaders in the trust, is there anything more that we could and should be doing to support this work, achieve the ambition? The ambition is fantastic, but how do we really make sure that we are, you know, making the most of this opportunity and creating that step change? So I guess that's a long question, but just from your perspective, you know, what more could we? I'm sure there is more that we could be doing.
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, I think to me, the commitment to co-production has been there right from the beginning. So I know when I first came on board as an expert by experience, there was that real commitment both within kind of the national programme, but also specifically from Humber about involving people with lived experience, whether that was as experts by experience or just generally in terms of sharing feedback. So I think that commitment has been there. I think for me, what is really needed to make that work is time and resources, because I think there's that recognition that co-producing does take that little bit extra time. If we're wanting to bring people in, people with lived experience, even if that's kind of engaging with people already on our inpatient units, co-production takes that little bit of extra time. It takes time for the people involved, it takes time for staff. So I think really for me, that's one of the key things that I think has been embedded throughout the Culture of Care programme so far, in terms of us having dedicated time to do that, to kind of come together, to learn from each other. And I think moving forwards, if we're rolling it out across the other inpatient units, potentially to kind of other services within the organisation, that to me is one of the things that kind of needs to continue. Time to work together for people to be able to kind of share their experiences, have those conversations and discuss things in a way that's going to result in real changes to the way that we deliver care and the kind of the culture on the inpatient wards.
Vicky, that's really helpful, thank you. If it's okay with you, I'd quite like to follow that up with yourself and Kaylee outside of this board meeting to actually make that happen. How do we give that time and resource in the right place to support this work? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I would just add, because I was at that conference as well, is I know there was developing work across other parts of the organisation. I think it's useful for the board to sort of just know at what pace we're progressing, whilst taking on board your point, Nikki, that it takes time. But that, you know, one of the great things is that when you've had some really great work, which you were involved in on some of our wards, on one level, you've done some of the hard slog. Actually, it's at pace on how we then spread that good practice and be fast followers of that pioneering work that was at the outset. I've got Kath, and can I welcome? Oh, actually, Kath, will you put your hand down? Was it up? I'm really pleased to welcome. I'm really pleased to welcome.
Same question.
Oh, right, okay. Well, let me take this opportunity. I was going to do it under my chair's report to welcome Kath Smart to the board. She will be replacing, I'll say something about Stuart a bit later, as our audit chair, non-executive director. So welcome, Kath. Michelle.
Yeah, good morning, Nikki and others, and Kaylee. Great to see everybody. And I mean, Lynn's picked up the question, but I just wanted to say it's great to see the journey. To be honest, I think it's really good for the board, because I think last time we said what we're going to do next and how we're going to build on that. So I think it's really great for the board to see that, because we've seen how it's developed and how you've developed and how you're helping us as well. So I just wanted to say that. And obviously I was going to ask about Lynn, and I think it's great that, Lynn, if you can get together and have a look and see how we embed it more across the organisation as well, because I know there's some really great work going, but I think we need to look at where are our gaps, where are things that we need to do more, and I think we can help you utilise your experience as well, because obviously patient care is central to what we do, and utilising the skills and experience that you've got is absolutely essential to that. So I think a useful thing for us to hear that conversation after EMT and maybe an organisational delivery group, just to really see that we're really getting underneath the surface of it, because it's not just something that we talk about. So great stuff and great to see, and it's great to see you again looking so well and everything, so thank you, and great way to set the board.
Thank you. Thanks, Michelle. Stuart.
Hi, Nikki. You are a very eloquent speaker. You might know that, or you might not know it, but I should say that. And I can imagine you talked about lecturing to students at Hull University. If you ever want to get a gig doing other lectures to universities, let people know about your experience. I think students would be really interested in your kind of very contemporary practice. My question, though, is about, you mentioned in your own experience being in and out of employment. And I want to kind of elevate our discussion to what I think is kind of a significant national problem we have, is that many people who don't feel mentally well enough to work are excluded from employment. We know that employment is the route to many great things for people's welfare and economic and other welfare. And I wondered if I was an employer listening to what you were saying, would you have any kind of top tips on how I become a good employer for people with mental ill health? And it's a really complicated question, but I'm interested in you, because you mentioned the fact of being in and out of jobs and how that worked for you sometimes and didn't work for you sometimes. I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's obviously been quite a big aspect in kind of my own recovery. I think for me, work was something that I did always engage in for a really long time. Even when I was struggling, it was something that I kept going with because it was beneficial, until it hit a point where actually I couldn't manage that anymore. And I think for me, that brought a lot of emotions with it about what that meant for me to step back from employment as somebody that had always worked and put a lot of value into the work that I did, having a career. So I think one of the things that I think is really important to consider is the emotions that brings up for people. I think people struggling with mental illness to a point where they're not able to engage in work, or maybe need to make adjustments to the way that they work or the roles that they do, I think that naturally brings with it difficult emotions and thoughts and feelings about that and what that means for somebody. I know certainly for me, and I think I referenced it, it was a really difficult thing to be asked what I was doing, and to have to say, actually, now I'm not doing anything because I'm struggling with mental illness. So I think some of the things that have been useful for me in terms of coming back into work is just people listening to things that I struggle with and wanting to make adjustments in line with that. So I think feeling like there was something that I could offer, even if that had to look a little bit differently. So I know when I first came back into employment, excluding the kind of expert by experience work, I came in initially into a part-time role because actually managing full-time work wouldn't have been possible. But my employer at that time was very happy to kind of have a conversation about how that might look for me and what support I might need to kind of get back into that role. So I think this is probably not a very eloquent way of putting it, but I think just talking to people, it's not assuming that everybody that experiences mental illness is affected in the same ways. So talking to people, being curious, asking what would be helpful and beneficial for them, and making those reasonable adjustments wherever possible, and valuing whatever it is that people can bring in that moment. And I think thinking about people experiencing mental illness in particular, lived experience is a really valuable thing that people bring. As Kaylee referenced, it's brought in addition to other skills. So I think not just focusing on that kind of aspect either, but thinking about the other things that people can bring alongside that kind of lived experience, or things that people can bring despite experiencing mental illness.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And don't underplay just the sheer importance of talking and listening, and I guess equipping people in all sorts of parts of the economy to be able to have those conversations openly as line managers, as business owners, as someone hiring, and all of that is really important. So thank you. Thanks for sharing your perspective.
I think it sounds like a simple tip, but it's not, is it?
It's not simple.
Listening is core to all of it.
Thank you.
Honestly, actually, Nikki, sometimes it's what can seem the obvious is clearly not obvious in organisation. It just gets lost, doesn't it? I mean, and it's the human stuff in some way, isn't it? Really. I mean, before I bring in Karen, my question was really linked to this issue around employment. And I wrote down something you said, which was stay well and in employment. And we've heard from other service users at Humber as well about how being able to get back into work has just had so many positives for people in lots of different ways. And to our executive management team colleagues, and just thinking about a board, is how strategically, given I think we have got a really good breadth, and we've heard of it today from Nikki and from Kaylee, of experience and insight into really enabling people with lived experience to both be part of our organisation for themselves in terms of employment, but also, as you said, Kaylee, I think about actually it is about our staff already, who also, like the rest of the country and the rest of the population, may not immune. And it's very interesting because you had a job in the health sector, came out of it, and then have come back into it again. So I think that really is a really good illustration. But I think it might be worth sort of maybe in another forum or something, exploring as an anchor organisation, whether there's some sort of partnership with, businesses in our areas who are interested in developing work, but they're not quite sure whether we can play a bigger role in that. I don't want to sort of promise things and overpromise and underdeliver, but I think it's a conversation we're in a really good place to take forward, given the government's agenda on tackling issues around this, not just for young people, but for people all different ages who find work a struggle, and employers who find it a struggle as well, because they're not quite sure, what to do. They don't have all the resources that we have in people like Nikki and others, but also in the organisation do so. So I'd really, I'd really like the EMT maybe to take that away and think about, we can come back to that conversation, because I think it's something we can really offer to our communities as part of that prevention community base, but also enabling people to get back into work or stay in work. We've got the skills, we've got the knowledge here. Karen.
Morning, and thank you for that, Nikki. I think you've just really sparked my thoughts this morning, because you make a really, really valuable point around the value of really good, reasonable adjustments to see somebody come and be able to contribute in the workforce. And I come at this from the perspective that occupational health sits within my portfolio, but equally, and it's commonly known across the NHS, and our trust is no different, that mental ill health is one of the primary reasons for absence. So actually, if I may, would we be able to have a conversation outside of here? Because I think there is something about the experience of somebody navigating some difficulties, who then use to be able to use that experience in terms of how we can educate our leaders, but also our occupational health team, about what will make the difference between somebody remaining off sick or being able to contribute some way in the workplace. And whilst we make those efforts and those endeavours, I think sometimes it doesn't always play out the way that we would intend. And I think you've got some wonderful insights that could help us for us to develop some tools for managers that would really help challenge people's thinking about what can people do and contribute, and like you say, then go on to be able to maintain really good attendance at work. So if you're happy to, I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Kaylee and I were also in a meeting yesterday morning thinking about the trauma-informed organisational approach and kind of how some of that overlaps with our kind of corporate teams as well, including kind of HR, occupational health, and really thinking about that and how to support people in that really person-centred way.
Brilliant.
So more than happy to.
Great stuff.
Great, lovely. And without taking away any Nikki's thunder today, there's people like Tom Nicklin and other colleagues in the organisation who are doing, you know, great work in this space. So, Karen, there's Nikki and others, I think, who could be helpful with that discussion. And that's great to be able to say that we're growing, you know, this resource, if you don't mind me saying, Nikki, in at Humber. Kaylee.
Yeah, it was just on the back of that as well. I think now's the time to start having conversations about, we know we've got an increase in diagnosis around neurodivergent population. How do we harness and support individuals at work who bring absolute skills but will struggle in a system that isn't built for them? So I think we need to include that in the conversation as well around reasonable justice. It will account for the burnout and what comes under mental illness, but it's hidden at the minute, I think, in lots of places. So it's just to include that in the conversation as well, along with, you know, Karen and Nikki.
Thank you so much, Kaylee, Fern and Nikki. Thank you so much for sharing some of your thoughts today. It's been really helpful and inspiring and actually so positive, and what a great start to the new year and 2026. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great.
Bye.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Great. Okay. So my report we've got up next. So let me just start by saying, obviously, formally to welcome Kath, but also Stuart. Dean has sent his apologies for today, but Stuart, this is your last board meeting. It has been fantastic working with you these last few years, and we will miss you very much. And we wish you the very best in whatever you're going to do next. You're travelling, your work, all the stuff you do in Bradford, I know, and to you and your family. But it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. You might want to say something in a minute. We're also, just to say, is that Dean, who can't be with us today, he will also be leaving the trust in the first part of February as well. Dean has been a fantastic non-executive director. He is a senior independent director as well, and huge amount of work. Karen will know this, and particularly as chair of the People and Organisational Committee, a freedom to speak up champion, and so many different ways in which he has contributed over, well, the last sort of, I think it's 6.5 years. So again, he will hopefully, for both of you, you will continue to be friends of Humber. I think we should set up a group called Friends of Humber actually now. I'm thinking that now, so we can, you know, reach out to you when we need to and what have you. But both of you have been such great non-executive directors, but also great people to share time with as well, which is, I always put in up references as well. They're a nice person, and you are both really lovely people, and it's been a pleasure. So thank you for that. Stuart, did you want to just say anything? It is your last board.
Well, I would. It is a bit odd saying something before we even have the meeting, but yeah, very briefly, I want to say a big thank you on a number of fronts. One, to this group, the board, which I think has been working in a very constructive and professional and ambitious atmosphere. I think that's one thing I wanted to say. It's been, you know, it's been enjoyable and rewarding. I want to say thank you also to all those people, kind of not necessarily behind the scenes, but who like produce the material we have to work with, and have been great at producing material and then responding to questions and doing things with our observations, particularly those colleagues who supported me on the various committees. I want to specifically thank also the board support unit who make these kind of events happen. And I hope that in some small way I've kind of contributed to the way in which we look after the safety and the well-being and the care of our patients and their families and their supporters, and that's always been the back and hopefully at the front of our minds as well over the last 4 years. So, and I want to wish you all well, because we do important things, and good luck to Kath. I feel we've got a safe pair of hands with you, Kath, and I feel very confident that you'll take things forward along with your colleagues. So thank you all very much indeed for the last 4 years. It's been fun.
Great. Thanks, Stuart. Can I also just say thanks to Simon Blackman, who, as a governor, resigned just before Christmas. I had a really lovely chat with Simon yesterday. He's really keen to do some work continuing with Humber, probably through the patient and carer experience work we do, but as a volunteer as well. So I'll be following that up with some board colleagues to make sure he's put with the right people on that. But it's great that although he's had to resign as a governor, he really wants to continue to support Humber in whatever way he can. So that's really welcome. So thanks to Simon for his service to us. Any questions on my report? Hopefully it is pretty self-explanatory, I would hope, and easy to read. Great. No, we'll go on to the Chief Exec's report, and there are quite a lot of things to approve and ratify, which I will try to get it all right at the end of the discussion. Over to you, Michelle.
I'm sure you will, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to keep this brief because I'm not sure my voice will hold out, but obviously my colleagues are here. There is a lot happening, as I always say, but it's been a particularly busy couple of months, especially over winter, the resident doctor strike, which I'm sure Lynn will pick up in a second, but our plans were solid, so thank you for that. And it hasn't gone amiss. We have thanked staff for that. There's lots of policies to approve, so they're there for you. We've also got hospital managers to ratify, which is great that we're seeing that process of hospital managers and associate hospital managers. So thank you to Kwame and others for that. And we have got some consultant appointments. And as you know, myself and the chair are involved in the majority, if not all, of the appointments of the consultants. And we've had some really impressive consultants coming through. As you know, we don't automatically appoint our consultants that come to us for an interview. But I think both myself and the chair have said that we've seen some really impressive people over the last couple of months. So we've got some really high hopes for them. So I hope that they're listening. I think a couple might be, so thank you for that, and it'll be interesting to see how they develop within the organisation. There is the modern slavery statement to approve, which is an annual process, which obviously Stella can go through, but that's just the usual process. There's no amendments from last year unless Stella tells me otherwise. I'll just draw your attention to a couple of things in the papers that the directors may want to pick up on, and may want to pick up other things. Obviously, the fit and proper persons process has commenced, so we'll be looking at the social media reviews and all the usual things that we do for that. Directors' visibility is there. It's good to see there is a breadth of visibility across. I know I'm spending some time in some of our other services. I'm at the prisons tomorrow, which should be quite interesting, for example. We've got a few amendments and a few appointments to the system, which I won't go through. They're in the paper. And the Confederation and NHS providers merger has started, and we've got an appointment in the Chief Executive Officer for that. We have met with the resident doctors in relationship to the 10-point plan, and Kwame may want to pick up a little bit about that, because we do need a non-exec support. I'll be picking that up with Caroline. It's only just come through, but we do need a nominated non-exec director. The autism support service is one to draw your attention to, alongside the restructuring of the professions from Sarah, and I think that will really strengthen the organisation. It's great to know that we're second in the national flu table. So thank you to everybody for that. We've still got a few weeks to go. I was speaking to Jonathan Coulthard yesterday, and we were still saying who's going to make it over the line first. So he thinks that they've finished theirs now. So come on, Karen, we can do that. But more importantly, it is about patient safety, patient care of the communities, and protection of ourselves and others, and in accordance with being Humber. Lots about Caldecott as well, which is good to see. So thank you to Sarah for including that. It's great to see that report. Lots on the alumni update, and we have got a separate report on Mental Health Act, because as we know, we finally got the Mental Health Act 2025. A bit about being Humber, and there's obviously the communications and charity update. I will draw the board's attention to my annual statement. If you've not seen it, it came out separately. Didn't go through anything that we've not talked about at board. Just the key process for this year is patient-centred care. Patients are the very heart of what we do. Our people are important to us, and we'll continue to work with our people to do that. And very much following on from the presentation this morning, we'll continue to really get that inclusivity and engagement across the organisation through being Humber, but also a focus. We need to focus more this year on outcomes. And it's something that we don't do particularly well across mental health and community services, just because of the complexity of what we do, but we do need to really get underneath that this year. So I'll stop there, Chair. There's a lot in the report. I've only skimmed through the service. I'm sure the board will have questions, but I don't know if any of my exec colleagues want to answer anything for the non-execs have questions. But Lynn, I am going to come over to you to give us a very quick resume of the resident doctor strike and winter up to now, because we're still in winter. So thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Michelle. We are still in winter. However, we're at least halfway through now. So as you're aware, as a board, you approved our winter plan, and we had strengthened our winter plan, learning the lessons from last winter, particularly in the realm of preparing for winter viruses and infections, and more work, particularly across the board, around responding to rising sickness absence across our staff team as well. I'm really pleased to report that on both those counts, and Michelle's just talked about the flu vaccine uptake as well, that's obviously key to protecting our staff and our patients through winter as well. So far, she says, a little bit of trepidation. We're really pleased with our winter plan. As Michelle says, it has withstood those sort of concurrent pressures of 2 periods of strike action by resident doctors. And we also had that period which was pretty drawn out actually, for snow and adverse weather in North Yorkshire. That really did hit our Whitby services quite hard, particularly, and the whole of North Yorkshire as well, with disruption to travel, some road closures. I have to say our staff were heroic in making efforts to keep our services going, and we saw very little, only minor disruption to our services. So no disruption through our strike periods, and no disruption of any material value through the adverse weather as well. As usual, we will now start, believe it or not, to review our winter plan already, thinking about those aspects of the plan that have worked really well for us and where we can sort of strengthen further. So we're starting to think about that now. So overall, our Opal pressures have been moderate across the winter period so far. Opal 2 for community, stroke Opal 3, and Opal 3 predominantly for mental health services, dropping to Opal 2 on occasion. So we haven't reached that sort of Opal 4 extreme pressure situation. The acute hospitals have, through periods, particularly after Christmas, actually, where they saw some impact on ED attendances, wait times in ED. So the UEC boards across our patch have been meeting. There's been a couple of extra meetings since Christmas as well, because of the adverse impact on some of those UEC measures, particularly wait times in ED. Less direct impact on ambulance wait times across the board, so that has been better so far through winter as well. But again, pleased to say that our management of our winter pressures across our services have had no adverse impact on the rest of the system. So we get a lot of positive feedback actually from the system about how well our plan is working so far. However, we never rest on our laurels. We will be continuing to obviously monitor the plan closely, and we will start to review it as well. So far so good, but I really do thank our staff who've really supported, all our efforts to ensure that our services are provided. They haven't been disrupted through the period so far. Thank you. Thanks, Caroline.
Thank you. Any questions to Lynn? Kwame, are you coming to talk about your report? Are you adding to Lynn?
No, ask the question. Let's do the question to Lynn first.
Yeah, fine. Okay. Any questions to Lynn? I've got one, if I may, and Catherine's got one as well. So let me just go with my one on under, I think it's 7.1.4. It talks about the Autism Mental Health Support Service, and it says it's a new unique service provided by Humber. When you say unique, do you mean unique in the health service?
It's a very new service, Caroline, new to the whole system actually. So to some degree we are testing and some of the methods by which we are providing this new service. So in that respect, it's unique because it's new. So it's staff specifically embedded. Actually, it's connected to what Nikki and Kaylee were talking about earlier. So for those staff who obviously experience autism, patients who experience autism supported in mainstream services.
Okay. I just was trying to clarify between new and unique are different, basically. Okay. So I was just trying to understand if this is a first for the NHS or is a first for Humber. It's slightly different. And are we paying it out of our existing resources? It's not a new contract or something like that. So I just wanted to understand.
We did receive new monies from the commissioners for this service, which is why as well, obviously, we are monitoring it and evaluating it very closely in terms of its effectiveness as well. But it connects with that whole work, Caroline, that we were talking about earlier around, you know, neurodiversity being mainstream across all of our services and adapting and adjusting our services to meet those needs rather than transferring people to the specialised services, which, as we know, have some difficulties in wait times, etc. So we are obviously monitoring it closely and evaluating it in terms of its effectiveness.
Okay, and on Maester Lodge, what's the average length of stay now, and where do we hope to get to in terms of reducing average length, the time there before discharge? I mean, that's a very interesting project, and it's good to see that. What's our ambition to get it down to?
I don't have the exact figures, but I can provide them to the board, Caroline. We do have that information. We know what the average length of stay is. It's longer than it is for working age adult patients, and that's typical across the country as well. But I'll get you the exact figure, but obviously that's our baseline that we're using, and we're expecting to see improvement because of that very close integrated working with the mainstream frailty service. Managing, because often it's the comorbidity between mental health and physical health conditions that leads to longer lengths of stay and difficulty in finding appropriate placements on discharge as well. So the whole project is geared around improving. Obviously, patients do better when they're placed in appropriate placements and not in hospital longer than they need to be.
I think it's a good project. I appreciate that. I think it'd be useful to know where we are and where we'd like to get to, and so we can, as a board, sort of reflect on, you know, the progress and outcomes.
I do have the data. I'll find it now.
Yeah, fine. That'd be great.
I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah. Can we make sure for those sorts of things in board reports, there's something in there that is something, you know, that sort of what I call concrete, sort of, you know, where we are and what we expect. I think that would be helpful. Kath.
Yeah, thanks, Lynn. You were talking about EPRR, and obviously I'm interested, as I know that comes under Audit Committee's remit. So the industrial action that was before Christmas, it looks like there was kind of minimal impact, but I think you started to touch on it there when you were talking. So I was just curious to understand if there was any sort of learning from deploying the plans, and was there any financial impact as well for the organisation? Thanks.
I guess in general, Kath, whilst we value our resident doctors, for many of our services, community services, etc., we can manage to have no impact on activity for short periods of time. If they were longer periods and more frequent, I think that would be different. But so far, we haven't seen any impact on decreasing activity that increases wait times for etc. Obviously, we have arrangements in place, Qualmic and ComEds, where our consultant psychiatrists will cover a lot of that activity. So we make sure that we've got a robust plan in place to make those cover arrangements work. And so far, with the periods that we've had altogether, we haven't seen an adverse impact. So we don't see, like the acute hospitals, that impact on increasing wait times and the related increase in costs as well. So we don't report a position on adverse impact on cost. So I think we're really fortunate in that respect. We've got good, robust plans in place. What we need to do is make sure, obviously, we're understanding who's taking action as quickly as possible, and on a daily basis, we obviously stand up our EPR arrangements in order to manage that, and generally it does work well.
Thanks, Lynn. And from a safety perspective, I was thinking for inpatients.
So we're fortunate again, Kath, obviously we monitor our doctors in terms of who is taking action, and we have a plan, a robust plan that we have in place beforehand. So it's those strong cover arrangements, and obviously we do have our consultants working into those inpatient wards as well. So thankfully we don't see a direct impact on adverse impact on patient safety through the periods that we've had so far, but clearly we monitor that closely as well.
Thanks, Lynn.
Thanks, Lynn. Thanks, Kath. Any questions before we go to Kwame? Kwame.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I can confirm the arrangements that we do have consultants, pharmacists, and specialty doctors who are usually not involved in the strike actions. And when we have a strike action working with Lynn's team and the EPR team, we do put a rota in place to make sure that we support the inpatient. For example, we would, if there were any training programs, as far as we can say, we would cancel the training and use that into a clinical areas at a time to make sure that patient care is prioritized over training, etc., etc. So the things that I wanted to share with you, the board, is the last November I talked about a 10-point plan and all the effort we're putting in place in order to make sure that the working lives of resident doctors are improved. After 12 weeks of the program, NHS England did a survey which our resident doctors representatives were asked the various questions within the 10-point plan, and I can report to board that our result came out excellent at 96%, which is really, really excellent. And this was resident doctors sitting side by side answering the questions. That's really fantastic. The other thing I wanted to say is that we've had a quality improvement meeting with the NHS England about our resident doctor program, and they describe our engagement with our trust as excellent. We do get fantastic input and feedback from our resident doctors, and that is also coming through in our recruitment. So at least 50% of our consultant body comes through our resident doctors program. So although they rotate to different parts of Yorkshire, at least 50% of them would come back and say, because of the good experience they had, want to apply to become consultant within Humber. The other things I want the board members to look at is our research conference. We had 400 people attending the conference, both in person and online. And the highlight of the conference is there. It's a short video for you to, if you didn't have the opportunity to listen to some of the fantastic speakers we have, both board members and people watching online could click in and look at it. And then we have another video for the life in the life of research, the research team, which is also a small video, but it shows a powerful experience of working in research and supporting research in the organization. There are other things in there, but I'll leave it for if anybody wants to ask me any questions around that.
No, thanks, Kwame. And really, honestly, round of applause on some of the really positive recruitment outcomes. And as I put in the chat, I mean, what comes through in those interviews is people's really great experiences when they've had a placement with us. And that has drawn them back. And as Michelle said, we don't just appoint because we won't have to appoint. We go through a full process, and I think in this last year, I think we're seeing some real upticks in terms of the recruitment, and to the team that do all the admin as well. Kwame, the board wants to send them our thanks too. Michelle.
No, thanks. Just to say that, just to support what Kwame said about the resident doctors from a bit of reassurance point of view, I did meet with the peer resident doctors, and we've got 4. Some organisations haven't got any. And they were really positive about the work that we're doing. Yes, we've still got a bit of work to do, but they were really, really positive and very enthusiastic. And yes, what it might be helpful, Stella, I know you're monitoring the meeting, if we could send out the research, at least the research team video from the day, because I suggested on the day that we shared that with the board anyway, because I think it just gives you a real overview of the team, some of the work that they do, who they are. And so that when we get the reports, it just makes it a bit more live, really. So if you don't mind, Caroline, if we can send that out to the board as a link, I think it's only about 5 or 6 minutes as a video. I think it'd be really helpful. And certainly to our new non-execs, such as Kath, etc., I think it would be quite helpful.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. I was very disappointed not to be able to attend in person due to a massive head cold. But yeah, it's great, really positive. Good. Any other questions? Any other contributions from other EMT members that you want to flag that's not on the agenda, or any other questions from colleagues? No. Okay, so let's get to, oh, sorry, Catherine. Kath, sorry.
Sorry, I wasn't quite sure how we did this report because obviously it's all the execs. I just had a couple of questions. One's sort of page 20 on the Caldicott Guardian update. It's just talking about the increase in freedom of information requests and how that's managed. And I just wanted to check how, obviously there's a time limit for compliance. I just wanted where that surfaced in our governance system, the monitoring of compliance with that.
Let's come back.
Yes, I'll pass over to, Pete's got his hand up. Pete, I'm going to pass over to Sarah, but obviously we've got a very robust governance structure and everything leads up to the Quality Committee board, but I'll let the execs come in, but in relation to this report, Kath, it just sets out a little bit of the work that we're doing from an exec team point of view, pulls out some of the both strategic, we try not to get too operational, some of the strategic pieces, and then it's absolute questions. Yeah, the more questions we get, the great, because we don't know if you're recovering it right, but we also put the visibility in because we think it's important that we demonstrate how visible we are as a board. So that's what the report's there for, really, just to simulate debate, really. But Pete, you got your hand up, and then Sarah on that question. Thank you.
Yeah, and sorry, Sarah, you might say the same thing, but FOI, we get a regular update at the Information Governance Group meeting, CAF, which feeds into Be Digital, and it kind of FOIs is a standard area of that report. And what we're often focused on as Sarah and Caldicott is where we have the FOI, what is the underlying reason for that, you know. So just as a level of assurance, and I did have a conversation with a DOF colleague a few weeks back because I think some FOI performance is dipping in some areas across the patch, and we just fed back at what resource we had and how well we performed.
That's good to know. I knew it was sort of surfaced somewhere. I'm just trying to get my bearings about where things get reported to. And then the final question I'd got was just, and I'm sure it'll come up again when you're giving us just the oversight of sickness management, and it's talking about some of the actions that are in place to try and improve that. It's talking about RTW, which I'm assuming is return to work interviews. And once again, it was just, do we have a key performance indicator on that, and where does that get monitored, and do we know what that looks like at the minute? It looks like it's an area of improvement. It's difficult to tell.
Karen?
Do you want me to come in? Yeah. So return to work interviews are monitored on our monthly scorecard, and they also report into People Committee, and we have quite an extensive people insight report. So we cover off all of the workforce metrics in there, and return to work interviews are discussed and heavily debated in terms of performance within the patient care and accountability reviews that we have with the divisions, because obviously we triangulate the performance and the delivery of return to work interviews and quality conversations with how we know that that will impact a sustained attendance at work. So it's heavily scrutinised and very well reported across a number of committee groups and certainly within our operational arenas.
So is it where we want it to be?
I think we would all agree that we would like it to be higher than it is, but actually what we have been demonstrating is an improving position largely. So I don't have the exact figure in front of me right now, but you know, we're upwards of maybe sort of 75-80% now, whereas before we were really challenged in that area. So this is a leadership cultural piece for us as well in terms of good management of sickness absence. So it's something that we do monitor really closely.
Good to know. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Kath. Any other questions? Sarah, you had your hand up. Are you happy with what's already been commented?
Yeah, Pete said it all, so thank you.
No, that's fine. Okay, just on the visibility on this report, can maybe the EMT talk about, because it's quite different how different executive directors actually write this up. Some is fuller than others, so perhaps that's a conversation in the EMT to have a sort of more standard sort of approach to that part of this report would be helpful. Okay, if there is nothing else, let's get on with the approvals and ratification. Is board happy to approve publication of the modern slavery statement? Yes. Okay, great, thank you. Is board happy to ratify Angela Raby as a new associate hospital manager.
Yes.
Yes. And just to flag there, Dean is also a trained associate hospital manager. So we're going through the non-executive director recruitment. We'll have to make sure we find to make sure 50% of our NEDs should be AHM trained. So we'll have to sort that out, and we will do. Are we happy to ratify the consultant appointments as outlined in the chief exec's report?
Yeah.
And if any of those consultants are watching today or later on, welcome to Humber. Glad to have you with us. And let's go to the ratification of the policies. I'm just going to run through each of them. Bank and agency workers. I hope that everybody managed to get into the portal as well. And Cass, were you able? We need to sort that out for you as a part of your induction as well. Bank and agency workers, happy to ratify? Yeah. Work experience? Yeah. No disagreement. Apprenticeships? No disagreement. Losses and special payments? Leave? Disciplinary? Recruitment and selection? Great, thank you very much. They are all done. I hope, Michelle, I have covered everything, haven't I, that needs to be approved or ratified?
You have covered everything. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Absolutely
Thank
fine.
you.
Yes.
Good.
Yes, you have.
Great. Okay, publications and highlights report, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you. Just very briefly, CAF. This is a report that we do, that I do, to pull together some of the major NHSE/DHC publications that come in, or anything that we think is relevant to the organisation. Just to give you a little bit of an update underneath about how we're taking it in the organisation, so you can get more detail if you want from that policy, or you can follow it through the governance process. So that's why we do it, just for information more than anything else. So with that aside, usual comments, I will treat it as read. We've picked out some of the things that we feel are the major publications that come through. Nearly all the publications actually get on this sheet anyway, whether they're relevant to us or not. And we've got some responses underneath with the relevant links. So I'll leave it there, Chair, unless there's any questions on anything. Over to you. Thank you.
I can't see any hands up. It's a really helpful document, especially with the commentary as well, and then looking into them. So I find it really useful and a good way to get other information and other knowledge. We move on then to the next item, which is the paper from you, Kwame, around the Mental Health Act. And I know there's been discussions with Steph and others about how the trust is going to proceed since the Act has come into being. Kwame.
So thank you, Chair. So I think I've learned, like, after 40 years, we have a new Mental Health Act, which has received a royal accent. I'm sure everybody's aware of that, in December 2025. I think it's long overdue, and the new Mental Health Act gives a lot of autonomy to patients. Some of the highlights is to make sure that patients are not admitted under the mental health unless it's absolutely necessary. There is a focus on making sure that patients who have learning disability and autism are not admitted unless they have comorbid mental health. That always gives issues around resources. In terms of how the Act is going to be commenced, there's only a small part of the Act which is coming into force on the 18th of February. The bulk of it will be phased over a number of years. The Code of Practice we implemented, implementation dates would also be set up by the government as we go along. In the trust, what we're doing is we set up a process, including bite-size training, support of the clinicians and the front line. Some of the things that we're doing is we have a SharePoint which has information on that. As we go forward, we're going to use the mental health legislation team with Insight Report to make sure that we have a strong governance around that. In the end, what we're hoping to do is to collaborate with system partners to make sure that we know what kind of training we need. Not only that, we would also, as Mental Health Trust also contribute to the code of practice. Our colleague Adrian James is leading on the code of practice, and we would all be contributing to that to make sure the code of practice is consistent with the spirit of the Act. Board, so in terms of recommendation to board is to understand the scale of change that is going to happen, and the trust-wide support that will be needed, and for board to acknowledge the governance structure that we're putting in place to support the implementation of the new Mental Health Act. If there's any questions around that, I'll be happy to answer. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much, Kwame. Any questions? And I've got Phil, and then I've got Steph.
I think we all welcome this warmly, and it's really good to see it. Kwame, are you going to make sure that staff are empowered to ensure that patients, when they need to be admitted or when they need a certain level of care, that there's no confusion or fear? Because the worst thing that could happen is that the changes are discredited, and they're just slightly anxious that something will happen and somebody's not been admitted that should have been, and that leads to discrediting the very welcome changes.
Yes, I agree. I think that we would, in terms of training program, question and answer session would be there, and I'm sure there will be even implication in terms of legal positions, which we as a trust needs to make sure. We would also, at appropriate time, scope up the risk management around that. In terms of changes in practice, I've already had a question and answer with some of the consultant and senior leaders to say that we should start to align our practice even before the implementation date. So, for example, CTO means you need 2 doctors to agree and to sign. That is coming into law. So what I'm saying is to them is, can we start even making our practices aligned to that even from now? So by the time the implementation date is announced, we are not from a standing start. We are already ready with the change of practices, and we will keep engaging with clinicians and frontline clinicians to make sure that happens.
Thanks. Steph.
Thank you, and thanks, Kwame. Obviously, this is something that we will keep a close eye on at mental health legislation committees as the implementation develops. I think it's going to be really important that we have a really focused project team working on this so that we can address those issues in terms of timings and making sure that everybody is clear as the process, because as Phil's already alluded to, what we don't want is any confusion, because that is where we start to build risk in terms of patient care, but also in terms of risk to community as well. So I think it's really important that we're clear about what we're doing and when we're doing it in line with the programme of legislation. There are clearly lots of dimensions to this, training being one of them, compliance being another, and also the culture that goes around it. So I think it's going to be a really important project, and it's going to take a bit of resource actually in terms of the implementation around this, and we need to make sure, I think, that our mental health ledge team has sufficient resource to progress this in terms of an additional piece of work to their day job, which is supporting our associate hospital managers and our staff teams. So I think it's going to be really important. It's going to take a long time. Actually, the timescale that's being talked about is about 10 years for full implementation. But there are things that are going to be more consequential than others. So I think keeping an eye on this from a governance point of view is crucial, but also making sure we've got the nuts and bolts in the organisation to make it really, really effective and really clear to everybody what's happening. So yeah, it's going to be good. It's a really good development, and I think there's some real positives here for patients and for staff in this. But yeah, I'm sure we will, but we need to get this right, and we need to get a good project plan in place.
Thanks, Steph. And I think you've been on a webinar, haven't you, Steph, in relation to this already?
Yes. Yeah, there's been plenty of briefing nationally. I've been on a NHS Confederation webinar around this, and I think the whole of the NHS is moving forward together on this, which is a really good thing. And there'll be some national guidance. There'll be a code of practice coming out in probably about 12 months' time. We're expecting a national code of practice to go alongside the implementation, which will be really helpful at that point. But I'm sure there'll be things coming out in the next 12 months that we'll need to keep an eye on in terms of implementation too.
Thanks, Steph. Kath.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, great to hear from Kwame and Steph on that patient care focus and staff investment as well. I guess hands up, the typical accountant, I will ask the question, because what struck me from reading the paper was also around the resource which you just touched on there, Steph. So you can start to see the changes will impact like staff and associate hospital managers, and also out with the trust in the tribunal system. So I guess my question was, is there any money coming with the Act, are we aware of, or will it be, you know, redesign, refocus and replace things that we're already doing to do them more efficiently in order to be able to release some of the resource, like you've just rightly pointed out, Steph, but it'll be wider than the Mental Health Act resource is what I'm reading into the paper. So is there any money that we know about?
Kwame.
Nothing has been announced by central government yet, but there is an acknowledgement that there will be resources needed. For example, resources in terms of manpower, changing our EPR system, making sure paperwork changes, developing training and culture in organization would take or would need resources. One of the things central government has recognized is it's all right to say that we should not admit patients with learning disability in hospital, but there isn't any facility within the community to transfer the patients from there. So that would need investment in social care. So there's a lot of that in the, but as we get to more and more implementation conversation, we'll know precisely what we need. We have set up we've approached PMO to support us to make sure that this becomes a project in the organization. And we were using not only our resources internally, but all the collaboration from the system, ICB, national systems, to be able to support us, to be able to make sure we get it right. There are only a few people who have a working knowledge of the last 1983 Act change. So we'll all be working together with our colleagues and systems to make sure we get it right. And I'm sure we would. We have the skill set and the specialties around to do that.
Good to know, thank you.
Thanks, Kath. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm just picking up on that point. I did raise it briefly yesterday in London about the resources, and obviously it's too early to say, but my impression that I got is that it's going to come from existing resources, that you've got to look at how we do things differently with people, because obviously the app increases things differently. But I think that's why there's such a long implementation, really, because it's a huge systems implication, as Kwame said, not just for us and the local authority, but for other, for other agencies as well. So it's going to, we need to do what we can do internally, and I'm really pleased that we've got off the mark so quickly with it, even though we haven't got any implementation details at all. There's just been a few odd conferences, but it's interesting who will take the ring nationally, whether it will be the regional team or whether it will be the ICB team, because obviously it's not in the ICB's remit with strategic commissioning. And I mean, they did put a paper on to say they were going to look at their role in it and what have you. So there's lots of questions that we need to ask. So we just need to keep making sure that we take your comments on board as well when we pass them into the centre and into our PMO. But we need to get on. There is a February date that we're working towards as well about deprivation of liberty, which we don't feel will have too much of an impact on us. But that for me is the most important thing. So when we come back to board, we can say we've implemented that part of the Act. So we'll see how that goes. And again, Kwame's and the PMO have got the lead on that.
Helpful, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle, for that additional information. Thank you. Great. Everybody happy with that update? Good. Let's move on. Thank you, Kwame. Let's move on to the Safer Staffing report. And I think we've got Sarah, obviously. Is Kate and Sadie joining us as well, Sarah? Or
no, Chair,
okay,
I'm going to present the report. Thank you.
That's all right.
Okay, so you've got the Safer Staffing report. The report is to provide assurance in line with the national mandated expectations from the Developing Workforce Safeguards, the National Quality Board, and also our CQC standards. the report touches on the safer staffing period from April of last year to September of last year, and we're ultimately asked to approve this report as well. The report details that we benchmark positively for our care hours per patient day when we compare to national and peers. And obviously the reviews have demonstrated that we use very much a triangulated approach. So within the report, you can see that we have different safer staffing tools for different areas, so community versus mental health. And in some of our wards and areas, we don't actually have nationally validated tools. So that's where that sort of benchmarking with Model Hospital, but also our clinical professional judgment is also really critical when we do these reviews as well. What I'm pleased to say from a positive assurance perspective is that there's no wards that have got 2 or more red flags within this period. And what you can see from the data is that we really do demonstrate a positive incident reporting culture within the period. Our supervision also remains high, which is also a positive level of assurance. As already alluded to within some of the other reports and the reports that Karen shares, and also acknowledged within our trust risk register, we still continue to have a challenge around our high sickness rates, but actually there has been an improvement in a number of the units which are detailed within our report. We've still got a bit of work to do in relationship to some of our effective measures, and that's the concept which you're hearing me talk about more and more. We talk about safe staffing, but now we're talking about safe and effective staffing. So there's still further work to do around our roster efficiency metrics, and that's an area that Karen and myself are working really closely on with our sort of workforce teams and safer staffing teams. In relationship to recommendations within the report, I'm recommending that there is no changes that need to be made to our care hours per patient day, therefore no recommendations from a budgeted establishment perspective. What there is within the report, a number of recommendations though, where particular units need to focus on skill mix, roster efficiencies, roster management, just to make sure that we're utilising our workforce effectively and safely across those areas, taking into consideration things like bed base and also occupancy. There's an ongoing piece of work which will see us into the year around further staff training and development around our safe and effective staffing, and that's something that you'll hear more about over the next 12 months. And I've also committed a particular session for the board as well, which is also in our board strategic development for the ongoing year. So I'm just looking for approval of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I thought there were some really practical recommendations in this report. Just to highlight one, which is looking at the staffing model across Maester Lodge and Core. I think you know, sometimes where we've got these quite small units, that just makes complete common sense to me, the suggestion of looking at a combined staffing model for some of those units. So I was really pleased to see that. Phil.
Yes, Sarah, really good report and really assures you that we've got good staffing levels. And when you look at it compared to our peers and national on the ward, it seems that we've got similar amounts but good levels of qualified staff, but lots of healthcare support workers. Do we continue to look at that skill mix? I know you mentioned it. And then the couple of other issues, and I've heard assurance already that you're looking at safe and effective staffing, because we have small isolated units, and I've never been onto a unit and think there's not enough staff in, but I've been on the unit and relative to the patients that are present, I thought there might be too many staff, but that might just be a temporary imbalance of, and that's difficult with small units. So I'm glad to see that you're really looking at that and seeing solutions. I suppose the only other worry is that some of these small isolated units have a really strong team. And if you're thinking about merging teams, keeping that team ethos is important. There was a few issues mentioned about clinical supervision and difficulties with that. I just wonder if you'd say a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay, so you picked up on the fact of the care hours per patient day and how that's sort of profiled across our registrant and unregistered staff, and that's just something that we've kind of picked up on this last report, that we can see a slightly higher profile across the unregistered. So what we've committed to do within the report is to actually understand that further within the next report. Obviously we do it every 6 months. What you'll also notice within the report is, particularly for PICU, is we actually have a number of vacancies from a healthcare support worker perspective, and it may be that actually we need to shift some of that into registrants. So I would expect to actually see some shift in how that benchmarks in the next sort of 6 monthly report. But again, we're going to do some further work on that and understanding what that kind of skill mix looks like. So that's an ongoing action which we will sort of progress with and keep the board updated on. The challenges with supervision that you mentioned is it isn't the fact that sort of staff don't get supervision. It's we have a very set window period of when we expect the data to be uploaded. If it's not uploaded within that period, then that's why sometimes we might get like a 0, but because basically they've actually missed that window. But obviously what we do is make sure afterwards that there has been the supervision records and there is the active supervision. It's something we're really, really keen on, particularly with a lot of the sort of the patients that we have. It's really important, and we actually go above and beyond and do quite a bit of sort of reflective supervision and build that into our sort of daily routine as part of the ward stuff. Was that all your comments, Phil? I'm trying to remember if I've got everything. Yeah,
that was really good. Yes, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Kath?
Thanks, Chair. Really interesting report from my perspective. First read, obviously, great to see lots of data in there, kind of triangulating the approach to quality alongside safer staffing. So I thought that was really great evidence. One of the focuses when I was reading it was around the violence and aggression incidents that are in the report. So one of the areas, the PICU, as part of your report, you've commissioned a violence and aggression deep dive, which seemed to make sense. And then I was looking at the data for other areas. Maester Court and New Bridges were 2 examples where you've got variation in the violence and aggression data between the periods that you're mentioning. So I was trying to just think about what that was telling us. You know, sometimes if variation goes down, we might want to understand if it's underreported, and if it goes up, is there underlying reasons? So I was just trying to understand, did we use something like statistical process control, which I know the trust is keen on, to understand what normal looks like for that ward, for that unit, to help you then decide where you commission further work on violence and aggression? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Yeah, we do use SPC charts to sort of look at that, and obviously that is one of the reasons why we've particularly drawn out the work at PICU, because we obviously know the nature of the client group which is within that unit, but actually we are seeing an increase in that. So that's why we want to do that sort of further piece of work. And also what you will see probably in sort of future board reports moving forward in the year, that sort of Pete and myself and that Karen's team have been sort of leading a piece of work around our violence prevention and reduction standards. So actually we have our self-assessment work that we need to do with that. So again, that'll be another lens that we will look through as well in relationships to those sort of types of incidents. But you know, if it seems more preferable, Kath, I can bring more of an SPC approach into some of the data that I can bring in future reports. If the board would like that, that's fine.
it's already a long report, I guess. It was just trying to understand if and it's very detailed as well, just trying to understand if you have a trigger, and you know, just looking on the surface of the data, it's difficult to tell. But if you're telling me we have looked at the trigger, we've looked at the SPC, and although there's variation in the data you're seeing in this report, it hasn't triggered a V&A review, I think I would be content. I was just trying to explore the methodology behind it.
No, that's helpful. I'll bear that in mind when I'm thinking about that as well. So thank you.
Michelle, did you want to come back in on that?
Yeah,
Yes,
I was going to suggest what Kath said, really. I don't want to make the report any longer, to be honest, and I don't get too much operational detail, but just that strategic view about how it's triggered and if it has triggered or if it's not triggered. And also, just I think every so often a reminder to the board where the governance goes, because we've got quite a detailed governance process, so where it goes as well before it gets here might be helpful. So I can pick that with my exec colleagues. I've also, Stella, to send you, Kath, a bit of the governance plan that we've got with the schematics of where everything is and where everything goes, because I think that might help as well.
Yeah, thanks for that, Michelle. And I think it's a sort of nice little, a gentle reminder on all these reports. It's really good to sort of just remind board, especially the non-executive director, of the governance process coming through on these different issues that we look at. Stuart.
Hi. Yes. Great report, Sarah. This question is about kind of tying the knots between the different parts of our governance, and it's about balancing the statistics that make us safe and providing high quality with the need to be productive and efficient. And have you got a kind of a rule of thumb about where you're going to pitch your levels? And the reason I'm asking this is because at the last finance committee we started getting really rich data on benchmarking our performance against other parts of the NHS through benchmarking reports. And I wondered if you got some thoughts that I guess would need to be triangulated between you. It's a complicated question, this, but I don't want to lose it. Between you, Pete, Michelle and Lynn, about, you know, what is the right level of staffing that makes us safe, effective and efficient? And you might want to say, I'm going to wait and think about it.
I think, I suppose to start the conversation, Stuart, what I would say is I've sort of launched the principle of safe and effective staffing. So there's the acknowledgement within the organisation that we need to ensure that we're safe, but also that we're effective and efficient with our resources, whether that's our monetary resources or whether that's our staff and our deployment resources. So I think that's a narrative that we are socialising with our sort of teams, and I think that's where we are with that journey. I think, you know, where I want to be able to see is where I show the care hours per patient day and where we may benchmark favourable, and I also like to kind of show it through the lens of where providers are from a CQC perspective. What I also know under the recent CQC regime, that of those trusts that have been benchmark favourably have also been recently inspected and have also been significantly downgraded, and their reports are due to be published. So I always kind of set that caveat. I think there's further work to do around our efficiency metrics. There's further work to do around our sickness. And I think at the minute I'm at the point of we're socialising it, we're looking at it, we're monitoring at it, but we need to be ambitious.
Yeah, and I think you probably
around safety.
I couldn't disagree with that. The principles are fine, but I think in the end one has to make choices about, okay, so how am I going to set my level of staffing? I guess there's a combination of things about, you know, with the quality of the individuals who are rostered and the culture in the team, which is not to do with numbers, it's to do with behavior, isn't it? So you do need to at some point say, we're going to pitch ourselves kind of here against the benchmark pack, for example. You might say we want to be in the, you know, the upper 60% quarter in the third quartile or whatever. But I think you do need at some stage to say principles are great, we want to be efficient. What does that mean? This is where we're going to aim, and I kind of urge you to kind of quantify it rather than move beyond those principles and socialising it's important to socialise it because you need to get staff on board to say, yes, we've got to get that balance. You're absolutely right, but in the end, you do need to take some choices, I think.
I know I can see Michelle and Lynn want to come in. I've got a similar question to Stuart, so can I just say mine, and then obviously Michelle and Lynn, I'm sure will come in because it leads into it. I mean, for me, some of the points in the report, and I think it's an excellent report, and I think it's very open as well about some of the challenges, which I really like to see in a board report. But for example, so the issue around why, you know, you know, in terms of the hours per patient per day, obviously there's an issue that you've highlighted there, is that where we are with a benchmark with our peers, it's like the healthcare assistants are doing much more than the actual registered nurses. So there's an issue there about both, you know, the level of skills that we should have providing that, which I think is in the report. The other issue on Whitby, I was very interested in terms of what you've identified, is that one of the issues around being effective is deploying staff suitable to the most busiest times that are necessary to have more staff there. And I think, you know, you mentioned in there, you know, the deployment of staff across the shifts requires urgent review, and also mention, which actually could be applicable to other areas, not just Whitby. Of course, as an employer, the Trust wants to support flexible working, but at the same time, it's got to be balanced with the needs of the service and the patients. So, you know, again, in those sort of areas that I've just touched upon, is strategically what's working across different members, if you like, of the team, to have discussions about how we can be more effective in those. When it comes to this whole safer staffing issue, seems to me the triangulation that needs to come together. I hope that's okay, and I'm sure you're doing that, but I think it's really good the report has pulled that out, but it's not just down to you, Sarah, and your colleagues writing this report. Michelle.
Yes, I won't prolong the conversation because I think we'll pick a bit of this up in part 2 as well when we look at growth and plans going forward. There is sometimes that balance between where we are and what we need to do. So I think we just need to bear that in mind. But just to say, this is the conversation that the exec team have constantly. I'm definitely, we have brought people in to look at our staffing levels, our rotas, work through some of the staffing levels we've over recruited, so we don't over reliance on agency, and obviously use our flexible working staff as much as we can in relationship to that. And I agree with you, Stuart. It's getting that balance between what it is, what we need, and where we need them, and how effective and efficient they are, and what skills that we need. And that's constantly changing, especially now we're seeing the modality of our patients change as well, because where healthcare support systems are fantastic, they do a fantastic job, we're more moving to need more skilled sort of staff because of the dependency and the acuity. So what does that mean, and how do we fund that within the resources that we've got? Because it comes back to, we have only got the envelope that we've got, that is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So I think it's a really good question. It's one that we need to keep having, but for me it's that triangulation of all the data that we've got, where it sits, how we're bringing it together, and not just looking at one data set. And I think what the Safer Staffing tries to do is to do that. And it is a very honest and open report. And it's that balance, isn't it, between that quality and finance, that we've got to constantly tread that balance. And we can't slip in one area and the other area. So I think it's a really useful conversation to remember, Stuart, and we do that a lot. We do that a lot at the exec team.
Lynn, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, Michelle has made some of the points that I was going to raise, so I won't repeat those, but I was just going to go back to the effectiveness and productivity element that Stuart raised, because I do think, like Michelle is saying, we can't just look at this, which is great, it triangulates some data, but there are other performance metrics, like length of stay, for example, outcomes we talked about earlier, didn't we? And Sarah and I are both leading a piece of work to have a sort of consistent approach to how we measure outcomes for these patients. Readmission to hospital is another measure as well, because if the ward is keeping people for a longer length of stay and those folk are being readmitted, that's not productive, that's not effective. So we are overlaying those types of operational measures over this report as well, increasingly. So I think we are seeing it across the board, and thinking about that productivity effectiveness agenda, Stuart, across these inpatient units. I hope that adds a little bit to what you were asking.
Yeah, and just to complete that, so you know, when we talk about our performance report and what's on the BAF, all of what you just talked about should feature in those top level reports. That's where we should hold and see that balance being struck.
Thank you. Thanks, Stuart. Okay, Sarah, last word to you.
Just sort of final comment. So it was just to sort of reiterate that obviously the national requirement is to report against the Workforce Safeguard Standards, CQC and National Quality Board. Now, none of those standards actually refer to anything around effectiveness, efficiency or anything. It's very much through the lens of, are we providing sort of safe care? So I think for this report, hopefully I've demonstrated that, but I think what we do know that you can't just be safe, you've got to be safe and effective. And that's why it's acknowledging that there's the ambition in the report to continue this conversation around being safe and also sort of being effective. And I think the other caveat is where we benchmark really favourably with the care hours per patient day. That's always because where we've got sickness or we've got vacancy, we'll always make sure that we've filled our rosters to ensure that they're safe. So we could have a really positive care hours per patient day, but we could have a 15% vacancy rate and we could have a 15% sickness rate, but we've ensured through bank and agency. We don't have a massive agency bill, we know that, but the point I'm making is we always make sure we fill up to our rosters. So that's why our care hours are good. So that's why the critical bit is our vacancy rates are low and our sickness rates are low, because that what will truly make us safe and effective. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Good discussion. I mean, it's a very good report. And as I said, I mean, I think it's, you know, it's got illustrations in there of the challenge and some of clear recommendations that are happening as well. So that's really good to see. Board, are you happy to approve this report? And our thanks to Kate and Sadie, who are also the authors of the report as well. Great. Thank you, Sarah. Let's move on to the next item, item 11. And we should have Lee and Matt with us.
I'm just going to join them in, Caroline, because we stood them down, didn't we?
Yeah. And on this report, there is a policy to ratify. It doesn't. We'll be doing that.
So whilst we wait for Lee and Matt, you know, I'll just tee up the report, Caroline. So obviously this is brought today. Apologies for the front sheet not specifying who wanted the policy to be ratified by the board. For assurance, it was supported and approved at exec yesterday. So I'm going to shut up because I am conscious of time, Caroline, and I know Lee's on the call, so I'm going to welcome Lee, and when Matt joins us, I'll welcome Matt.
Okay, so, thanks very much, Lee. Lee, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Just for Matt, he may not make it. I know we're seeing patients at 11, so he may not be able to join, unfortunately. So yeah, we've got the paper as Peter
said.
Sorry,
I thought it was 11:30. I was told.
Is he now, Caroline?
Oh, right, there he is here.
All right,
yeah,
okay.
No problem.
So welcome, Lee, Matt.
Thanks.
Thank you. So yeah, paper's been tabled. It's gives a brief update on where we are on progress with artificial intelligence solutions, predominantly the use of ambient voice technology, which links into the original business case we had for voice recognition and ambient voice. Also, we've got the how we're using AI on the roster system to optimize and improve. That was a more recent one that was approved as the business case. The other items, so for instance, Copilot, the full Copilot is currently in discovery mode, working with partners nationally and locally, just on the capabilities of the tool. And you've got to think of it as a tool rather than an absolute solution. And just at the moment, as we've recently received free of charge, the Copilot chat, what we direct staff to use and not use, although it will save us funds because it does replace some of the capabilities and tooling we've already got for meeting notation. So there's also a very brief slide on the governance. It's based on the governance that was, or is the governance that was approved just under a year ago at EMT that were revised. Obviously, we were reviewing that governance as well, so it's as a point in time. where the AI oversight group, there is a full set of minutes for all these, and terms of references provides that multidisciplinary oversight for AI in the organisation, and of which Matt chairs, and that reports into the digital and data group, which then reports into EMT with assurance from Finance Committee. There is the policy. Matt, do you want to pick up anything around the policy briefly?
Yeah, thank you for reviewing the policy last year. We took the comments on board, particularly around the EHIIA, the focus on the High Court ruling. So we had that reviewed by a number of different people with expertise in the area, just to make sure that everything that was there within the assessment was proper and correct. There were several different documents running with different people's comments on. So what I've done is amalgamated all of those comments and tracked them with comments. So I think separate to this particular document, you've also got the full tracked changes to the previous policy that you reviewed.
Yeah, let me just say, I don't really want board getting something that says we'd have to go through all the track changes.
Let's
leave that for now. But I think for policy, we just need, to be honest, a summary of what is changed that is easy to understand beyond the front sheets. But I think that's something we can sort out later. But yeah, I have looked through it all, and I think it has been updated appropriately in line with the board's comments. So yeah. Anything else you'd like to add, Matt?
Yeah, thank you. There was a few things really. I think just to reflect the bit of the challenge with AI at the moment. There's lots of conflicting views. Obviously, lots of optimism about the abilities that AI has got, and the things that can help us achieve, but also the safety concerns and the ethical concerns. So a lot of the governance is designed to kind of address that. So our AI oversight group has got a really broad membership covering quite a lot of people within the trust, but we've also recently recruited our workforce equality, diversity and inclusion lead, who I think is going to be a real asset to help us with that. What we do need to do is get the patient voice involved more. So that's going to be the next thing that we need to do from the AI oversight group perspective. But the other big thing that I think we really need to do is look at the staff engagement element of it. The staff engagement piece is going on much more broadly with regards to staff representation and staff engagement, but particularly improving AI literacy, I think, is a really important part. So we just started to work with comms to look at doing some bite-sized learning videos, kind of teaching people a little bit more about what the limitations and the risks are, the software as a medical device risks and issues, liability and copyright. And I want to teach people a bit more about the actual technology itself. So my bee in the bonnet is talking about neural network and trying to teach people about that, which then underpins everything else, and also teaching people about prompting, which helps people to get the absolute best from the technology.
Thanks very much. Keith, I think you had your hand up.
I did. Sorry, Caroline.
Right.
A bit like Michelle, I did, and but then Matt, I wanted to let Matt come in. So I think there's two bits for me here. I agree, Matt and Lee, with the policy and the need for a policy, and the changes to policy I think make sense. I suppose the bit for me that I'm struggling with is I don't see a strategy and a vision for AI. What I see is a series of things that we're doing almost like bolted together independently. We're doing some of this, we've got some free licenses, so we're doing some of that. I don't see a strategy and a vision for what we want to do with AI and what we think AI can support us with. And then as part of that, we're deploying a series of tools that deliver against that strategy. And therefore, I don't struggle with the policy. I'm struggling with the wider bit as to how it all fits together. And that might be because it's not in the report, but I worry that without that strategy and vision, we are just bolting a series of things together to try and do stuff, which is uneloquently described by me, but I'm trying to get to where my head is.
Yeah, I would echo that. And I think that also lies in then how can we be assured as a board that what we're doing actually is in line with the strategy in terms of the outcomes we want as well. Michelle.
Yes, first of all, thank you for the report. And we know the things about track changes. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not. Sometimes people like it, sometimes people don't. So we know that. I think for me, let's just take a breath here. And I take your points, Keith, and others. But I will say thank you to the team, because actually we are far, far, far further ahead than 90% of the other organisations around in relationship to AI. There was a lot on the news this morning. I'm sure you saw it about AI, etc. So I think we're not going to have all the answers. I don't think this paper is here to provide all the answers. It's just to give you a bit of an overview. Maybe we can write it a bit better, Keith, in a bit better way that starts to explain that, as it were. But it's start of a journey, it's start of a process. And as Peter's put in the chat box, we've actually shared our policy with a lot of other trusts, because they're really struggling to have any of these conversations, both at the board or even earlier within their executive team as well. So I know it's far from, it's not going to have all the answers into it, because I don't think we'll ever get there with AI, because of just the world is coming. But we've got to work within the parameters that we've got, and I think we're starting to do that. We're obviously doing the digital governance review, which hopefully we can bring back next time to the board about the process that we're doing that, because we've met and we've got some. I just need to brief the chair a bit more on that. We've got an outline of that, so I think it'll all start to hopefully come together. But I do want to commend the team for where we've got to, because yes, there's a lot more work to do, but we're doing reasonably well at the moment. But it's the staff engagement that's important, and that's where things like the innovation hub comes in as well. It all starts to link together within our transformation work. We've mentioned productivity. Well, AI is a solution to that, so it all starts to link together. I'll leave it there, Caroline. I could go on for a bit longer, but I will leave it there. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that there's awards being won, and the digital team have got this HSJ award nominated. So that's all great. I think what Keith is reflecting is how strategically this all hangs together, so that when we get reports to board, we can sort of satisfy on the assurance that these tools are actually doing what we want it to do, which is either save money, get more work done quicker, see more patients, more effectively use staff time. How it fits into all of that. And I think that's a bit of a work in progress. Right, Karen, I've got next.
Yeah, I think Michelle touched upon a few of the comments I was going to make, actually, but I'll say them regardless, because I haven't managed to share with Lee specifically. But I think particularly I was, quite conscious of what was in the media this morning, particularly around ethical use of AI and training people to use it in a meaningful and a helpful way. But in the HR community, particularly across the regional HRDs, there has been recognition of our trust being much further ahead, given that there are, considerations at the moment about partnership working around AI chatbots to resolve HR queries, for instance. We're a little bit down the road with that. So appreciate that strategically it might not be quite as strong at the moment. I think that there is an acknowledgement, particularly in the region, that we're slightly more mature than others. So seeing this work play out today, and the policy is we're certainly ahead of the game a bit. And I've seen Pete's put in the chat box that we've been asked from a HR perspective if we can share some of the work that we're doing with others. So I just wanted to commend you for that, because I know there's still work to do around the governance and strengthening the strategy around it, but I think we are doing a lot and in line with our values. So thanks, Lee, but I'll pick up a wider conversation about that with you, because I think it'll be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Lee.
Yeah, it's a really valid point, Keith, and has been pointed out. We have got a gap in our current digital plan, and that has been recognised. The draft plan is in place. It does reflect the medium and long-term plan and commission intentions, as well as the aspirations for the trust as a whole. We've just held back because we're tying it into the service planning aspect to make sure we're closing the loop on the short-term activities. So there is a draft digital plan which can be shared now, but it still needs to be tempered with the aspirations of the organisation, such as the mental health front door using AI to help on the agentic AI to help on direction of patient, etc., risk assessment, them type of things. So then we can appropriately focus resource towards the trust's overall goal. So I do apologise for not having the plan. It's just how the timings come. So we are working in accordance with that draft plan at the moment, with the absence of anything else. But I do really want to get that plan signed off, and in conjunction with the service plans as well, for that very reason, because then we've got that very clear clarity, and we can be very clear to the organisation where we're going to focus, where we're not going to focus, and utilising things like the AI policy, where we can make sure we've got the appropriate guardrails and controls in place to be as an effective and leading trust as we really aspire to.
Thank you, Lee. And none of this conversation takes away from the excellent work done and how amazing was the EPR work and all of that. This is all about, we're learning and growing, aren't we?
Absolutely, Caroline. And I accept there was a gap.
I certainly am.
It's and I think that's probably the reflection on an AI, and is, if we're having this conversation here, we've got to be very different. So it is an ongoing conversation, and I think it's just how we manage that challenge. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, Keith.
Yeah. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. I'll work with Lee so that we can put this in the plan in a longer form way. But I just wanted to come back a little bit on the strategy and the vision. I think for me, the focus is on being that fast follower, isn't it? That's what Borders agreed. We don't want to be at bleeding edge. We want to be a fast follower. So that means not looking at developing AI. That means not self-hosting AI, but that means looking at products and services that are out there that have some degree of proven benefit elsewhere within the NHS and elsewhere. So that brings us to the two things that we want to achieve. I mean, you've mentioned it already, Chair. It's performance and productivity, isn't it? So there is two links in the paper of studies that have been done within the NHS, particularly for Microsoft Copilot and particularly for ambient voice technology, both of which you might need a little bit of a pinch of salt for, but both of which are really enthusiastic about the performance and productivity benefits that you can get from both of those technologies, which is why they're the kind of predominant ones within our plan. But the other one is recruitment and retention. So obviously we've got our 10-point plan for our resident doctors, and we've got a retention and recruitment plan for consultants and for other clinicians. And there is reasonable evidence, although again, pinch of salt is needed at this stage, that the two technologies in particular that we're talking about, Microsoft Copilot and ambient voice technology, do make people's working lives better. And I think ambient voice technology in particular is being pushed centrally. It's going to be taken up by almost every trust, I would suspect, over the course of time. So that, if we can be a front runner within ambient voice technology, I think that's going to set us up really, really well. Because I think as a clinician, why would you work for an organisation that doesn't provide this, where you can work for one that does? This puts us at the forefront of that, so that we can really recruit the kind of best people that are coming out through training. So let me work with Lee, and we'll try and articulate that in a better way. But
sure,
that's the vision.
I think we've got a huge amount of content, and that's been expressed today about, I think it's just how it's pulled together and fashioned to provide that sort of, I suppose, assurance, but also just sort of why we're doing this and what we should expect from it. That we're, that's a piece of work that's developing, isn't it? So yeah, and you've got board's full backing for all of that, and obviously you've both taken part in some of our other board discussions as well. So thank you for that. I haven't got any other questions, but thanks for that conversation. And is the board happy to ratify the amended policy? And thank you for doing that as well, Matt. Happy with that, everybody? Perfect, lovely. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, Matt. Have a good day.
Thanks, both.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, let's move on to the sexual safety report. Karen.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So I'm just providing an update on our progress on implementing the actions that have come off the back of the Worker Protection Act, particularly in light of the fact that we were probably one of the first trusts to sign the Sexual Safety Charter at the back end of 2023. So again, setting out our commitment to ensuring that we have a safe environment at work and responsiveness when such incidents arise. So there's a lot in the report, but some of the key highlights in the progress today. Obviously, we've adopted the national policy framework around sexual safety, but with some nuances to it to make it a little bit more humble, in line with our tone and our voice, as it were. We've established some really clear and robust reporting routes, and what we've done is linked our sexual safety work also to the other EDI strands that we're delivering, so to the Respect campaign particularly. So we do optimise upon our report it inbox. I think it's really important at this stage to say that we've got really strong working relationships within People and OD, with the safeguarding team, with Sarah, with Kate, with Rosie particularly. And the two co-chairs of the sexual safety group span both People and OD and safeguarding, and we're seeing a real richness in terms of how we deliver and embed some of this work because of the collaborative working that's happening. And it's not limited to those teams either. Freedom to Speak Up too. I know we've got Sarah coming soon, but also the strength around our relationships with Freedom to Speak Up. We have established and implemented the sexual safety e-learning, which is available on ESR. It's not mandatory at this time, given that we reflect very strongly within EMT on the boundaries in which we implement mandatory training, given that we like to maintain strong compliance and we look at certain criteria for that. But we have got quite a good resource hub around sexual safety, and our intranet is supporting us with that, and we continue to add to that over time. So you'll see within the report that actually NHS England keep adding new actions. So there was a revision in December that added quite a few more actions. So 75 out of the actions on the framework have been completed. We've got 8 amber. We don't have any reds in there. Some of our delivery of those actions are predicated on nationally commissioned training, for instance, that we're still waiting for investigating officers, and also some of those national guidance and resources that we can't deliver on the action until those things have been published. So there are a couple of actions that we're still yet to complete, but obviously there's a caveat to that because it's not within our gift to move it any more forward than we possibly can. And in terms of some of that governance and grip, so we've got clear executive leadership. We do have a lot of oversight within our exec team. Whilst I'm the executive sponsor for the programme of work, Sarah and I discuss it really frequently. So again, really joined up in that sense. But actually what we have done is empowered the sexual safety group, overseen by Alison Meads and Rosie O'Connell, to really live and breathe and actively manage and work through that action plan. So governance is really strong, and we see that flow well straight up to the board today, but through the People Committee and regularly into EMT as well. I won't talk about the staff survey because that's one of our key measures of experience, and I know we're picking that up in private board, but we are seeing year-on-year progress where maybe others have been falling back. So that's a really good indicator that the work that we're doing is starting to play out. But one of the other things that we do need to do once we can start to expose some of our staff survey data is to really correlate our sexual safety work and cut that by the EDI data so that we can be really tailored in terms of any other internal actions that we need to take. So I'll leave it there and I'll just open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Steph.
Thanks, Karen, for the report. Really useful and really good to see the progress we're making in terms of complying with what national NHS is asking of us, which is really good. And there's some really interesting elements of this, which we could talk about for hours, actually. But I think one of the most important things is around culture, isn't it, in the organisation, and staff feeling that the support is there, and also clearly understanding about sexual safety in the workplace and what it is, and having that clarity around what our expectations are as an organisation. So on that, I just wonder if you could say a little bit about the informally, I know we're going to talk about the staff survey and stuff later, but informally, what our staff are saying about this, how staff are feeling around this. And secondly, around patients, and just specifically addressing what we're doing with patients. And I know it's really can be quite challenging around sexual harassment and inappropriate sexual behaviour from patients towards staff, because I know it's a feature across the NHS, and certainly in a former life is something that I came across quite often, and just how we're addressing that issue with our staff.
Yeah, they're two very, very big questions. And I would say we've got a comprehensive communication plan around this in the organisation, but we do rely on the platform of the Sexual Safety Group, and that has a number of cross-organisational representatives that, you know, in similar ways that we do with the Health and Wellbeing Group, for instance, that we rely on those individuals as ambassadors for the word, as well as our kind of global communications. And I think that's why it's important that we linked it really strongly to the 2 existing campaigns that we have through Respect and No Excuse for Abuse. And No Excuse for Abuse is around the sort of behaviours from patients towards staff, because what those 2 campaigns have done, and what came out really strongly in last year's staff survey, was that we felt and could see that staff felt confident to report incidents. And I think that's the key thing here. You know, we know that we can't eradicate behaviour, but actually we know that culturally we can create that safe environment so that we can report incidents, respond to incidents, and demonstrate that we're committed to a positive culture in the workplace. So anecdotally, we've had some formal feedback from people around the comms, and a male in our workforce actually came forward. Yeah, I will share it around the board actually, because it was really quite insightful and quite heartwarming in many respects. A male that had worked previously in a male-dominated sector where misogyny was quite apparent, and then it went unchecked and unchallenged. And actually, when we first launched the campaign, he wrote, you know, an extensive email to say that he celebrated that as a trust we lived by these values, and as a male that he felt able to support and champion women in the workplace and call out behaviours or even language that maybe wasn't appropriate from other males. So whilst that's just one voice, actually the fact that it came from a male in terms of the culture that we set here, I thought was really quite interesting. I think from my perspective in a HR capacity, I will often hear the voices of those that are maybe going through resolving complaints or concerns that they have. But actually, like I say, a lot of this is about, we want to be able to create the environment where people feel safe to report, so that we can prove and demonstrate that we will do something about it. Because in many organisations where those things go unheard, you can't do anything to respond to it. So for me, the biggest thing was about saying we want to hear when things are not as they should be, and then we will demonstrate that we will do the right thing. So it's not quite so easy to quantify, Stefan. I could talk all day, but I think we're getting there with the culture. And I think because we've got Being Humber as a really strong cultural vehicle here, I think people are really clear about roles and responsibilities and behaviours, and that we will tackle it and we will respond to it swiftly and robustly.
Okay, and Kath.
Following on from Steph's question, really, because I think it's a great report, gives a really good position statement, and it was about the, you know, the impact for patients and the impact for staff, and if we're possibly likely, if you just articulated, Karen, to see and maybe an increase in reportable incidents, and we kind of got the infrastructure to be able to manage, because what we want to do is be able to learn, investigate and learn from those incidents, to put additional things in place to help us, you know, promote, continue on that culture journey. So we've got enough resource in the Sexual Safety Group that you identified, and enough resource to respond to other things which we would welcome their reporting, because we want that improved reporting culture, don't we? People to feel safe.
Yeah. So we actually created that infrastructure when we embedded our other campaigns, the Report It campaign, when we launched No Excuse for Abuse and Respect. And I think what I said to the board at the time was, never would you hear a HR director say it would be good to see an increase in bullying and harassment cases, but actually we would be able to demonstrate the success of our campaign when we did, and we saw 70% increase in bullying and harassment complaints, which, you know, might make a lot of people nervous, but that was a direct correlation of saying it's okay to report these incidents and we'll respond. And it's the same with sexual safety. What we're hearing in HR, and the cases might not be extensive, we don't have massive numbers of sexual safety cases that we're looking at, but actually we're seeing many more than ever would have come to the fore previously, but we do have the infrastructure to be able to respond to those, which I think is important. The other thing that we did put in, which is a key cultural measure, was around being part of the Just Culture work. And Kate Baxendale actually works with our team. So again, a massive thank you to Sarah's team to co-chair the Reducing Avoidable Harm group, which is a group that looks at harm that comes from employee relations cases as well. So that how could we do things differently? It would be even better if we did X, Y, and Z. And I think it's really important that culturally we have that check and balance so that we can do a proper learning the lessons, but from with an MDT type lens, so with quality and patient safety experts and safeguarding people in the room. And we're finding that that's really helpful in terms of the trauma-informed approach when we deal with these cases, because HR people can often follow a policy and a process. So to be able to adopt that cultural mindset is important to us.
Thanks, Karen.
Thanks, Kath. Just before I bring Sarah in, I was a bit sort of like, when I saw that the centre had decided we've got another 5 action points to add on to what is already 78, I have to say my heart, dropped a bit, really, sort of thing. But from what I understand, the actions they are asking at adding on are a reflection of what they've found, not necessarily at our trust, but across the NHS, which was a lack of understanding around what sexual safety was about. And actually, and that's obviously goes to Steph's point, I think it goes to Kath's point as well. Obviously they've added these others onto our ever-growing list. In your mind, do you see that as a particular issue here? Because I think for all you've said, this has been really thought through over the last couple of years now, and that's been taken on board and the learning is there. But I just wondered what you thought about that. Obviously, we're going to have to do it. We've got to add it on. But what's your sense about where it? Because clearly in some NHS trusts, it's been a problem, and that's why the centre said, "Oh my goodness, we've got to add another 5 whatever actions onto this charter."
Yeah, it's really challenging because you can see the driver for it, and we know, and I certainly hear across partnering organisations that they are reporting some high levels of cases and scenarios that are playing out that don't necessarily apply in our context, and we've got a fairly good grip over it. So sometimes you can have a sense of feeling done too. However, if we can deliver, this is about proportionality, isn't it? And delivering something well. And if it's in the interest of improving experience, then we'll work through it, but in the interest of the organisation and the people within it. So there are some things around reporting and recording and how we transfer information around organisations. I can see the value in that. It aligns very strongly with our ethos, our fit and proper persons test, all of that. But we need to give the time and energy to do it well and implement it in a way and a time scale that's meaningful. I think the bit that's unhelpful for me is when NHS England add actions that require things from them that are then not forthcoming, and that's frustrating. But I think we'll need to learn to sit back on that and just wait for the appropriate resources to come through.
Thank you, Sarah. And then
Playing with the point, thank you, Chair. It was just to sort of support Karen really in the sort of the points made around actually how this is part of our trust vision and our values, and around sort of being Humber and how we sort of truly embed it around making sure our staff are safe, but also our patients are safe. And that's why both our teams work really, really closely on this to make sure that it is truly embedded within the organisation. So that was it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Kwame?
Yeah, no, thank you. Just as a responsible officer for doctors, I know that the GMC is very, very keen on this angle of sexual safety. I'm sure everybody remembers the conversation around surgeons and their inappropriate behavior. So professional boundaries, respect and accountability culture is something that's gone into something called a new good medical practice. And therefore, doctors are benchmarked against that. So I'm really, really happy that the trust is taking all these issues seriously, because when I report normally to the GMC, I'm able to reflect on the good work that we're doing in the trust, and that gives them happiness about it. Thank you very much for doing the work.
Thank you very much. Everyone happy to note the report? Thank you very much indeed. Now I know we've got Sarah with us, Sarah, but I think people are desperate for a break.
Yeah, that's
so can we come back at 2:45? And if that's okay with you, Sarah, thanks for your patience. Thanks. Okay, welcome back to our public board meeting today on the 28th of January, I should say. And Sarah, thank you for your patience in coming to your item. And it's the Freedom to Speak Up 6 months update. Welcome, Sarah.
Very much. Thanks for having me. This is first for me, so it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. So I'm Sarah Forster, anyone that doesn't know me, and I'm the newly appointed Deputy Guardian for Freedom to Speak Up alongside my other role. So I'm here to speak about the Freedom to Speak Up papers that I believe you've already seen, but I wanted to raise a few highlights for your particular attention. So I'll just take you through a couple of pieces. So firstly, I wanted to update you regarding the changes to the National Guardian Office, which is our governing body in Freedom to Speak Up. They are due to close in June 2026, so we're now working towards the end of that. As we move closer to this change, I wanted to provide assurances to the board that we are working closely with the ICB about all future arrangements as to how we will manage going forward, and we will update you as soon as we can when we have more information on that. So locally within our trust, our team as Freedom to Speak Up Guardians Ambassadors is being strengthened. We obviously now have filled the position of Deputy Guardian with myself. And I'm working alongside Alison Flack as the Guardian. And most recently, we've started to begin an ambassador recruitment campaign, which has already had some really good feedback. And we've already got a few interviews lined up. So we're really looking forward to seeing a big expansion of our ambassador team, and something we're really proud of and something that we're working really far with. So we've had a good lot of interest on it, and this won't stop. We're going to continue as we go through the year. I think it's something that we can continually work on, and obviously my role in comms supports that as well, so we can build that campaign. So I will update you as and when we have additional ambassadors. Our team, as a group of all of us, meet regularly and discuss any outreach activities that we're doing, spending time with teams to teach more about Freedom to Speak Up and get our faces out there so people can see the people behind the email addresses, etc. We use these meetings to educate and support the team, provide them with more information about relevant policies. And I know Karen's just been talking about the Sexual Safety Charter, which is something that we brought to the most recent team meeting that we had. And we obviously welcome Michelle Moran, our executive sponsor, to regular meetings, and she attended our most recent one as well. And the team really appreciate this, and I think we're starting to use those meetings a bit more as an educatory, safe support space to make sure that everyone's got the information that they need to be able to do their role as best they can, and also just to give something back to the group as well, who are speaking with so many people around the trust. So over the coming months, we're looking to welcome more speakers to our meetings, and we've got a full programme of people that are going to be attending those to further support and educate our ambassador team. One of the areas I wanted to highlight from the report I've sent through is the number of concerns that we've received so far year to date. And we have already exceeded the number of last year's figures in this year to date, only going up to the end of December, which we're really pleased about. We're crediting it to the network of ambassadors that we have and the work that they've been doing, going out there and spreading the word, and also elevating the role of the Freedom to Speak Up team. We think it's to do with the increased awareness of our team and that building of the open and safe culture for sharing anything that they feel the need to. So we will update when we have the final figures for the full year, but at the moment we're seeing an uptake, which we're really pleased to see. I wanted to remind the board that throughout our internal audit, we were given significant assurances on our policies and processes. And I believe we're now looking to arrange another one of these. So we hope that the board will be really pleased with the further progress that we've made since that. And then finally, I just wanted to read out a very small snippet of some feedback we received from somebody that came to Freedom to Speak Up. Hopefully I do it justice, but it's just a really nice thing that we've been sharing, and we're planning to share wider so that people understand what a safe space it is to come to Freedom to Speak Up. So they said, "I wish I'd have spoken out sooner. Now I've seen the support there is within the trust and Freedom to Speak Up provide, I now wonder why I didn't." So we're really pleased to hear things like that and know that people are coming forward and feeling safe when they do so. So on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening and hand over to any questions.
Thank you very much, Sarah, and congratulations or welcome to your new role. Good to have you. Michelle.
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Very well presented, Sarah. It was your first session with us, so thank you very much. You'll know Sarah from other guides, but she's the new deputy guardian, so very, very well presented. And obviously, we're very pleased to see there's been an uptake in that, and we know we've got more ambassadors now, and we'll continue to try and increase the number of ambassadors we've got across the organisation, given our geographical profile. We've got a long process, Catherine, we could go through with you about how we monitor them, what the process is. We've got ethnic backgrounds, demographics, etc. that we do reports as well, and we also meet with the SID on a regular basis as well, and our exec that's free to speak up. So it's quite good that we've got, well, it's very reassuring that we've got the significant assurance from the audit point of view, but lots of work continues, and we'll continue to do some more work on that. But thank you to Sarah and the team, really, because you're really establishing that network now around the organisation that links into being Humber, so we can just start to see that coming through. So thank you. I'll leave it there, Caroline.
Thanks very much, Michelle. Sarah?
Thank you, Sarah. Great report, and it is really positive to see that sort of improving sort of numbers of staff coming to Freedom to Speak Up. It really is demonstrates sort of that positive culture and reporting, which is something I kind of really want to see through that lens of staff safety and patient safety. It was just to say that obviously it does acknowledge in the report that there'll be sort of further work done to strengthen the triangulation of bringing the teams together, but just to sort of so the board is aware that that kind of does happen. It's just already, it's about strengthening of it. So Kate, my deputy, regularly meets with Sarah and that to actually do that triangulation piece and understanding, but this is just more about formalising that as a forum and how that'll develop over the coming months. So thank you, Sarah, great report.
Thank you, Sarah. Kath?
Hi Sarah, nice to meet you. This is my first board meeting too, so we're in the same boat. Just a couple of quick questions. I think Michelle just touched on one of them. I'm interested in, you're growing the Speak Up ambassadors, and it's just that thinking around making the assumption you're wanting those to be as diverse as possible across staff grades, gender, ethnicity, disability. So it's just a little bit of information on kind of how we grow them, bearing that want for diverseness in mind. And then my second question was just great soundbite from the feedback from that member of staff that you've just read out, and you've said there's an anonymous questionnaire that's sent to staff, and I just wondered what that sort of that wider cohort is telling us about people who've been through the process. Would they speak, and did they have any kind of other constructive feedback that we can use as a trust going forward?
Thank you, Catherine. Nice to meet you as well. Yes, so in terms of diversity, that's something that I'm really passionate about, making sure that we have a broad range of ambassadors for people to speak to. I feel really strongly that people speak to people. I don't think they speak to job titles. I don't think they speak to divisional representatives. I think they speak to people that they feel comfortable with. So I think what we've been doing to explore that and grow that diversity, we are attending all of the staff network meetings to ensure that we're there and trying to actively recruit in the staff networks. We are looking at making sure that we have somebody in every division, but we're not limiting ourselves to that. So it's about having the right people there. We're also doing some work to highlight a bit more about our ambassadors as well, so people within the trust have a bit more of a background. I think it's quite appropriate for people to learn a bit about what's behind that, like I say, the job title and the person, to know whether they're the person they feel safe wanting to speak to, and that level of safety is how we make sure people are bringing things as early as possible to us so that we can act upon them and they don't ever escalate into anything more concerning. So we are doing lots of work to ensure that, and I think the programme of increasing our numbers will only help with that, but we are making sure that we're making specific efforts to go out to all different groups within the trust to make sure we have that diversity of ambassadors. And then your other question about our feedback that we've been receiving. So yes, the questions ask in our questionnaire, we ask how people have felt it went and whether they would do it again if they felt another need. And we get really good feedback ultimately from those. I've had a look at them recently, and the general feeling is that people would come again, and they felt very supported and safe when they did so, and they felt that we came back to them and made sure that they were fully aware throughout the process as well. I don't have all of the feedback in front of me right now, but I'd be happy to make sure that you had a copy of that if that was something you'd like to have a précis of.
But maybe we should have an induction meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think it would be good to have an induction meeting. I mean, actually, I meet with Alison, who's the Guardian, every couple of weeks, to be honest, Catherine. So we have a look at where we've got them, where not. I mention it in vlogs and everywhere that we go. So it's quite well communicated. And now we've got a medic as well, which is great. So, and we'll continue to do that. And there's a bit of an induction for them as well when they come, and they are allowed some protected time to do it. So, so we are constantly spreading that message. And Sarah and the team are doing a fantastic job on that. But we can share what we've got in relationship to the outcomes. But the triangulation is the important bit, how we're linking it into the rest of the metrics that we've got.
Thank you.
Yeah, good idea. I think that's a really good idea as part of your induction. I certainly had it when I came to the Trust. We'll add that in. No, I think it's really good. I'm really glad to see about the forum with HR and operational lead and patient safety teams. I think that's a really good idea. I very much get a lot out of the catch-ups with Alison. Sometimes Nikki is there as well, that Michelle and I do with the SID as well, because when we go through the board reports and even some of the discussions we've had today, I can recognise some of the issues that staff have actually raised through the Freedom to Speak Up route and some of the challenges. So around staffing levels and, acuity of our patients, coping with that and all those sort of things. But also, I'm always interested in those discussions with our guardians about, was the first time we knew of this through Freedom to Speak Up? And, again, I think this forum will help sort of explore, we will always need freedom to speak up. I think every organisation, it's never a job done, but it allows to reflect. And I think this forum can do that on, if we haven't heard it first through line management, what's gone on there, what hasn't been resolved or what hasn't been done. And I think that is a really great, I'm really looking forward to hear more a part of my catch-ups on how that's working. So I really welcome that. Any other questions? Great, thank you very much. Thank you for your presentation. You are a comms specialist, so you rose to your professional standards today. I can tell you that, Sarah. Thanks very much. Take care. Thanks for being patient as well.
Thank you very much for having me. Thanks all. Take care. Bye-bye.
Great. Okay, let's move on to the finance report, Pete.
Thanks, Caroline. So this is the finance report as at the end of December. As I usually do, I've included the system financial position, which is as at the end of month 8, because that's the most publicly available information. But as you can see from the report, the financial outlook across the system is one that continues to worsen, with a year-to-date deficit of £38 million, and that was a £22 million adverse variance to plan and a worsening adverse variance month on month. Just for context, at month 9 across the NHS, providers are being asked to lock in their forecast for the year. So it's where we get, I'm going to say, a once in a year opportunity to declare if we're going to hit our plan or not. And I think it's highly expected across the system that providers in Humber and North Yorkshire will be declaring an adverse variance at the end of the year and not hitting their break-even plan. And we did pick that up a little bit last week in the Finance Committee. I guess for the Trust, we're almost the exception to the wider challenge financial position. As you can see in the report, at month 9, we continue to record a favourable year-to-date variance of about £3 million, which is linked to non-recurrent income. And we have now identified to NHSE that we expect to maintain that position to the end of the year and deliver a year-end surplus, the benefit of which that does get converted to capital for 26, 27 and future years, which helps with our capital ambitions. And again, we did pick a little bit of that up at the Finance Committee last week. I guess a few headlines from our Trust position I'll pull out, if I may, and then I'll shut up and go to questions, is our year-to-date agency position continues to perform really well. You can see from the report at month 9, our year-on-year comparison is 2.2 million lower than plan. We continue to have a healthy cash position in the Trust, but we have that healthy cash position while still maintaining the Better Payment Practice Code. So we're not actively managing our creditors and debtors to maintain our cash position. We're paying people as promptly as we can. And I think the other thing to draw out in this report is the improved position for the mental health division. So, you know, some of the most folks around the table will recall the mental health division produced a financial recovery plan through the accountability review process, because we did have some concern on their forecast. But, you know, I congratulate the division on the work they've done to get their spend under control. And whilst we have still got an adverse variance, it's a significantly improved position from when we started the financial recovery process. So, as always, a whistle-stop tour of the finances, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much, Pete, and reassuring information on the mental health division as well. That's good to hear. Any questions from colleagues? Golly. Great. Okay, thank you for that, Pete. Moving on to performance report.
I think Stuart put his hand up quickly.
Oh, sorry,
Caroline.
sorry, I
So
missed that.
think,
sorry, Stuart, I didn't see it on the list. Stuart, sorry.
I was only just typing something in just for colleagues' benefit. We're also now seeing at the Finance Committee a medium-term cash flow forecast, which I think is a really good addition to our sense of the outlook. So well done to Pete and his team for producing that. That's very helpful.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay. We'll move on to the performance report.
Lovely. So again, this is a report to the end of December. You know, I think it's fair to say our pattern of performance continues in a similar vein to what we've seen in previous reports to the board. Mainly that, you know, we do see strong performance across a number of our workforce metrics on vacancies, mandatory training, clinical supervision. You know, I think we should applaud our 2-hour urgent community response performance. We know that's a feature of the NOF, and I think our performance at the moment is in probably the top 2 or 3 in the country. So again, we should applaud that. You know, care programme review and early intervention in psychosis have performed strong across the reporting period. And, you know, it's not surprising to anyone, sickness remains an area of focus, you know, and we have proactive management in place, and we have regular updates on that through ODG and EMT. You know, we are still in the planning round, and we'll probably touch on that a little bit this afternoon. You know, and we're continuing to work with commissioners on activity plans for next financial year, you know, and that will link to our waiting times and other performance targets. So I will stop there, but unless any of my exec colleagues want to add anything I may have missed.
Pete, can I just ask a question? Have I read it wrong? But I thought the virtual ward bed occupancy was at 92%. You say it's fallen below target at 89% in December. I'm sure that's have I read it wrong? Because I looked across. You're talking us down when we shouldn't be.
Yeah, no, that is very well spotted, Caroline. So, you know, thank you.
Okay, we are on target. We're above target because the target's 80%, isn't it? Yeah, great. Okay, all right. Glad I read that right. Phil.
Yeah, really interesting report. Similar themes to previous months, but I think we should celebrate. There's some really good performance. I was thinking about how well we're doing with 72-hour follow-up, CPA reviews, increasing children and young people access. Apart from ADHD and ASD, we've nearly eliminated over 52-week waits. And early access, early intervention psychosis, everybody's seen within 14 days. So they're amazing. And we always have to turn to the issues. I noted that we got an increase in 52-week waits for adult ASD, and I'm just struggling a little bit with that because I thought the waiting list was closed. So I don't, some explanation of why that's got worse would be helpful. And the East Riding talking therapies are only at 80% at 6 weeks, which to me, as a primary care physician, that's not good. And we're struggling to get the perinatal access volumes through. They seem to be tailoring off. And also, we've had a spike in delayed transfer of care. So some overall, I thought it was really good, but there's just a few elements that just sort of highlighted that maybe a bit more explanation of what's going on would be helpful.
Lynn, can you just pick that up, Lynn?
Yes. Phil, that point about adult ADHD and an increase in waiting times, no surprise because of the children's ADHD position. What we are seeing is there is an increase in children graduating to the adult waiting list. Right. So we are on top of that. and obviously we're doing everything. We've got a number of actions in place to improve that position, but that's the underlying reason why we're seeing that position. On talking therapies, Phil, as well, we've had some turnover in that team, so some vacancies. We expect that position to improve. And we did see a pressure on our delayed transfers of care, patients who were clinically ready for discharge. No surprise, we saw that through winter as well. So we have escalated those to the relevant local authorities as well. And we are expecting that position to improve. We've continued our MAID work as well, that multi-agency discharge work, and targeted that at some of our longest delays still as well. So we generally do see a pressure on those through winter. I guess local authorities are sort of prioritising right across the system. I've talked earlier about some of those acute bed pressures and delays as well. So we get a bit of a symptom as a consequence of that too as well. But I think those were the main areas that you covered.
Absolutely, thanks. It's really good to hear the actions are underway already to help.
Steph?
Yeah, Phil came very close to answering my question, but maybe I'll ask it anyway, which is about perinatal access. And just a quick explanation, please, just for my understanding of what these figures are actually telling us, because they do look a bit red, I'm afraid.
Shall I bring Lynn in again, and then I'll probably top up what Lynn's going to say.
So we have a focus. There is this target is about prevalence of women who should be accessing the service. So it's really focused on, it's not that we're not responding to the referrals that we receive, we absolutely are, but it's that prevalence target across the population. What we're doing in response to that is making sure that all the women that we would expect to see being referred to the service, so referrers are a target for us as well, to make sure that they are referring the women who would benefit from this service. We use a lot of social media, same as Sarah's gone, to give prominence and advertise the service as well, Steph. So we are working on that. We do expect to achieve through the coming few months that 8% target rate as well. The national target is actually 10%. We're currently not funded or resourced to reach the 10%, but that would be the next step for us as well. So again, we have a lot of actions in train at the moment to help us achieve that 8%, 8.6% rather, target for the prevalence in relation to that service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I see that Caroline's put a note in the chat about prevalence.
Yeah.
And do we actually have a firm estimate of prevalence in our population?
That was what I was going to bring up. One of the things we're asking the ICB is what the, because obviously their public health will have more data information than we do, because that's what their population health base should be doing, and the public health piece. So I've asked Jack, amongst others, in relationship to ours. It's well assumed nationally that the figure has been over. It's been set higher than the actual prevalence in general populations, but because our population is so diverse, so we're waiting for that information. The ICB are working through it, but obviously with their changes it isn't forthcoming. But the most important thing, whatever that happens in relationship to that, we don't get funded at the 10%, so we need to be really mindful, and we'll pick that up later. It goes back to Stuart's earlier point, is we can only do what we get funded for. So we're actually meeting the target that we get funded for, but not for the 10% piece. And that's one of the things that we've raised with the regional office when we met with them.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Lynn, for your explanation. That's really helpful to understand. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for that, because we're really proud of our perinatal service. It's just terrific work across a lot of different areas. So if this can be clarified in some way, I think it would, it would just be really helpful, because the work is absolutely exceptional.
Can I just add, Caroline,
sorry.
we've also launched the maternal element of the service, so that's even a more specialised service, really working with women who, for whatever reason, have maternity loss. I guess what that enables us to do is strengthen even further our partnership working in the maternal services as well. So if that doesn't increase our sort of referral rates and prevalence, then I think Michelle is absolutely, we've got to ask, you know, where are we with this sort of target and how it's been set as well. So we're watching that very carefully at the minute as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Kath.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. A really sort of informative report from a newbie perspective, and I love the SPC, which you've probably already gathered I'm a fan of. So just two questions really. One was on the vacancies. So the bottom graph, which I'm on page 6, talked about consultant vacancies, which looks like it's kind of running above target consistently. And I know, Caroline, you talked earlier that you've been on some panels recently, so it could be some of that as addressed, but I don't know if that brings us back to where we'd like to be. So that was my first question.
Karen? Kwame, do you want to pick that up? Kwame? We do very well on consultant appointments, by the way, Kath. You know, from where we've been, but when you look at it across the patch, which is what we were referring to earlier on, actually, I'm not sure there's many organisations that the board have signed off 5 new appointments. So, but it is something that we've got a hotspot in, and we're watching from an agency point of view as well, particularly. But Kwame, over to you.
Yeah, no, everybody from where we went through a phase where we had higher vacancy, and everybody on the panel board here has been working very hard, HR, operational colleagues. And once we've appointed the 5 new consultants who are starting in around February and March, our vacancy rate would drop significantly. In fact, we have a stretch target to say that within the next financial year would eliminate consultant vacancy. That's my stretch target with colleagues. So we're doing very, very well. If you see the graph, maybe if you attend other committees, you might see the graph as it's come down rapidly over the last couple of years.
And do we do exit interviews as well when we have, well, all staff, including consultants, depart?
We do exit interviews with everybody, Kath, yeah.
Did you want to come in, Karen?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think Kwame delivered a really solid medical workforce plan some time ago that frequently comes into the People and OD Committee for assurance. And I think the backdrop of this, Kath, and I don't think we're dissimilar to other trusts, is that at a point in time, I think we peaked at about 36% consultant vacancy rate. So actually, whilst it's higher than we would like, actually we've sustained almost a month-on-month improvement over the course of the last probably 2 years, actually, if we were to go back and track it that far, but certainly maintained that over the last 12 months. So the next report's actually going to the People and OD Committee next week, and I think it is a real testament to a lot of hard work. But February, this February does seem to be the magic month, doesn't it, Kwame? We do keep smiling about the gains from this month, so and we'll see that play out. Thank you.
Well, all I can say is my diary is always popping up consultant interviews all the time. But just for Kath's benefit as well, correct me if I'm wrong, Karen, Kwame, but you know, one of the things we've looked at is obviously in terms of agency spend on the consultant side of things in terms of locum. So I think part of what we've got is we've got our own sort of in-house, haven't we, locum arrangements, but also seeing some of those locums want to actually come and work with us as consultants, and I've seen that in the interviews as well, coming through as well. So I think there's those different angles as well. We've tried to reduce the agency spend, but also encourage them. I know Michelle and I have been on a couple of visits and met some locums and said, why don't you join us, you know, and encourage them through. Karen?
Yeah, just to add to that, so we're actually a bit of a trailblazer with NHS England at the moment for a couple of reasons. So our conversion of locums from what we call standard placements to agency direct engagement, which standard placements have you sort of IR35 implications and cost implications for the trust. To see that switch is really important for us. So we've seen our agency spend with regards to locums come down significantly, despite the fact we've maintained a similar, quite a stable level of locums as well. So we've Temporary, who we use to sort of manage our system, have worked really closely with us, but equally a big part of the strategy has been around converting those locums, as Caroline's rightly said there, into substantive appointments, even once we've got them onto an ODE contract. So that's been really important and really valuable, and I know Kwame's teams work really closely with my flexible workforce team on that, and again it's really paid off. Thank you.
That's really useful, thank you, and I would look forward to the data showing the evidence of that improvement. And a second question, if that's all right, Chair, it's a really quick one.
Absolutely.
Just on the virtual wards, I know you mentioned it earlier, but just looking at the data that's presented there, looks it's kind of like a great news story for how you've grown that up to heading towards occupancy. So it was just, obviously we're aware of a vital role that virtual wards can play in the system as a whole. So is there any plans to grow capacity to different pathways, for instance, to increase the role that the virtual ward plays in the communities we're serving?
Michelle and Lynn?
I think to be blunt, not at this stage. I mean, I think we're trying to preserve what we've got, to be honest, within the planning round. So yeah, something that we have put into the ICB, but it doesn't appear in their 5-year strategic plan. However, that doesn't mean that we're not pushing, and we're not trying to show that left shift in relationship to it. And again, we'll pick up the financial growth or not growth in the left shift piece later.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Lynn, did you want to add anything?
It was just the same thing. We put countless proposals to particularly North Yorkshire ICB at the sort of potential to expand virtual wards, but at the minute there's nothing in the planning assumptions in North Yorkshire that would allow us to expand further. I think we can certainly demonstrate the effectiveness of the model continually as well. So our preference would be to expand. And those are the conversations that we continue to have, as Michelle says, but at the minute, there's nothing definite in the planning assumptions.
Seems a shame, a missed opportunity in terms of patient care, effectiveness, efficiency. It goes for all of those things, doesn't it?
Totally agree. And this is a frailty service at the minute, but there's certainly potential to demonstrate it could be applied to other pathways. Definitely, Kath, and we have demonstrated that as well.
Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially when you hear all the stuff around new ways of working, technology and everything else. And I know, pertinent to what you just said, Lynn, one of the consultants we recruited not so long ago was very interested in a mental health component to a virtual ward sort of way of doing things. So, yeah, I mean, it'd be nice if they could get on with it, because the more we can embed it, the more we can make use of it. And I think we've overcome, haven't we, some of the problems we had initially, not our problem, but getting clinicians to refer to the virtual ward.
Our issue was,
that's got better,
that's
hasn't
it? Much better. Yeah, our issue was sort of confidence in changing referral patterns, particularly from EDs in the acute hospital and the acute hospital wards. But we've worked hard on that, and again demonstrated. And that's largely due to the increase, how we've achieved the increased occupancy is through that work. Just on the mental health sort of element, I would say, Caroline, that a lot of our work that we're currently continuing to expand, particularly around older people's and admission avoidance, is within that sort of virtual ward type approach. And again, with that sort of step down, step up model that we've described in terms of reducing out of area placements, I think that comes very close, particularly with the integration with the frailty service as well, which is why that sort of pilot's really important as well. I think increasingly we are getting towards that type of model being applied there too.
Makes total sense. Okay, I can't see any more hands up, so thanks for those contributions and questions. And we'll move on to the Keith, you're up, Finance Committee Assurance Report. Thank you for doing this at haste with Pete and others. from the committee?
My first thing was to say thank you to Pete, because without Pete, I would not have got it in quickly enough for the papers. So thank you, Pete and Nicola, because the meeting was only on the 21st of January, which I think was the day before the papers had to be in for the board. So we have turned it around very quickly. This was Finance Committee meeting on 21st of January. I think some real positive assurances in there, particularly around where the organisation is in relation to its plan, in relation to its BRS, which is on target, and also specifically in relation to its agency spend and the reductions in agency spend that the organisation's seen. This is comparing with last year, but also the year before as well. So that drop in the last 2 years is really significant. We saw an updated version of the Green Plan, which we sent forward, and we also saw the benefits work around the EPR system and the implementation of that, and the early benefits work, which was really interesting. We're doing, as you know, a lot of work around performance and productivity and the metrics around that and how we look at it and what we can see and how we can make that more visible so that we can have a much richer conversation. I think it's progressed significantly in the last quarter since the first meeting, but I think we all appreciate, Pete and his team particularly, that there's some variable data in there, both our data and some of the national data, and how we use that to really have those detailed discussions is still a work in progress, I think, is a fair comment. And we've obviously got work around planning, which we're going to touch on in the private board this afternoon. We made a recommendation around some deep dives around agency spend, a review of the wording around risk from the ICB finances, and we recommended the new terms of reference for the committee to the board. We are still playing around with the agenda a little bit to get as much time as we can on efficiency and productivity. So I think we will probably take a little bit more time from grip and control, because I'm very comfortable with where we are from a grip and control point of view, so that we can really maximise the productivity conversation. And then the only escalation, Caroline, is in the private board this afternoon.
Okay, thanks very much. Any questions to Keith? Thank you for that report, Keith. Phil, over to you.
Yeah, this is a Quality Committee Board Assurance report for the meeting that we held on the 4th of December. There's a slight error on the front sheet, which says September 25. It's December 25. Just a couple of points, really. One, which is to triangulate what we've already discussed, and just the assurance that the Quality Committee will be looking further in depth at things like the PQ review of violence and aggression, and that the Quality Committee takes a particular look at that, and they'll keep an eye on the work. We decided to trial prioritising our time on key areas. In this meeting, we looked at the BAF, the Quality Insight Report, and waiting list and performance updates. With the BAF, we're doing that for the next 3 meetings. We oversee 3 of the strategic themes, and on this occasion we looked at innovating for quality and patient safety, and over the next 2 meetings we'll look at the other 2 and try and be inspired by Stuart to get them to a place where we feel that they reflect where we are as a trust, and so that was really helpful. Under Quality Insight, we had a review of PSERF, and we tried to understand why when we'd had serious incidents, some of the reports were taking a long time. We were assured that some of that was making sure that they were appropriate for coroners, because there's been some national criticism that the new PSERF reporting mechanisms don't make the reports fit for purpose for coroners' courts. And also, we looked at the fact that our reports try to involve the patients and families, and that also takes extra time. We also were pleased to see that we maintain a high reporting low harm culture, and under waiting list and performance, we've already had quite a lot of that, but we were encouraging the reporting to move more to focusing on hitting the constitutional standards, particularly as Apart from ASD and ADHD, we've nearly eliminated 52-week wait. So we're starting to look towards seeing our reporting, looking at reporting on the constitutional standards, which obviously 18 weeks. And again, a theme we've already been talking about this morning, which is balancing the well-being in staff with service requirements, which is part of that safer staffing. And it's another element to that. And, you know, does the well-being of the staff deteriorate when we push them harder or make them work more efficiently? So we had a good discussion about that. And as I said, the next 2 meetings, we'll be looking at the 2 next themes of the BAF and looking at that in depth and trying to get them as good as we can to reflect what we're trying to achieve as a trust.
Thanks very much, Phil. Any questions to Phil? It was a very good meeting, I think, was there. Okay, moving on then to Stuart, Collaborative Committee Assurance Report. Stuart?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll just pull out a couple of the highlights because you can see the reports there for reading. I think what I'm seeing here in this committee is this now quite a well-established and mature collaborative. So even though one of the parties left, the Sheridan Clinic left the end of last year, what we can see is that there's good collaboration and innovation and constructive relationships across the group, which is really good. And the second thing I wanted to bring out is that there's been some really good experience in finding alternatives to admission for children and young people services. And that's now being explored and extended to adult eating disorders admissions. And a bit like we just had the discussion about the virtual wards, there's really good tangible evidence that if you invest in preventative activity and avoid admissions, you get better outcomes and you reduce your resource input as well. And against generally good financial position overall for the collaborative, we've still got our eye on the cost of enhanced packages of care. So the number of packages is reducing, but the cost of those individual care packages remains high. So that's fairly centre stage for the finance team's scrutiny, which I also wanted to highlight against, as I say, a backdrop of a good position where we're potentially reinvesting in things with some recycling some resources. So yeah, all good on that front.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Any questions? Okay, moving on to Audit Committee then, Stuart, please.
Yeah, once again, this is a meeting we had in November, and we found continued good understanding of corporate risks, and we had a great discussion with the forensics division into their specific risk register. And I was assured once again that risk management is well entrenched. All of the other kind of programs of work in relation to internal audit, counter fraud and procurement are in play as we want them to be. And we once had inevitably another discussion about the contents of that page on the BAF, which we all enjoyed. And I'm going to leave it there because I'm going to, with confidence, hand over the baton to Kath for next time. But we're all in good shape once again at the Audit Committee in November.
Great, thanks very much, Stuart. And that's your last report to board. So
it is.
Except we're going to be in part 2 shortly, and you'll be saying something more there. Great. Okay, thanks very much. Can't see any questions. That's great. Thank you for those reports, colleagues. Item number 20 is just to flag the agenda for our strategic development meeting in February. And can I just flag again, we will be having photographs, board photographs before the start of that meeting from 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock. There'll be individual photographs and then there'll be a group photograph as well. So please give enough time to make sure you arrive so we can get on with that. Thank you very much. That's my housekeeping issue on that one. Anything on that? Anything on that strategic board agenda? No. Okay. And it hasn't been put on the agenda. Oh, well, items to escalate. I haven't got any. Nothing's been put up to me on that front. We normally have review of the meeting and that somehow got missed off my agenda. So any comments on the meeting today? I think there was good discussion, good questions. I think there are obviously some takeaways there for the authors of some of the reports to think about as well. But yes, any comments from anybody else?
That was on my agenda, Caroline, being Humber, but I've no comments. Some good questions. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, therefore we can close the public board meeting. There's no any other business. And I suggest we come back at 1:05 to start part 2. Okay, thank you.
Caroline, have you got 30 seconds?